night. The Biden campaign says it raised more than $26 million at the event.
Wow.
5,000 people attended. It was hosted by actor and comedian Mindy Kaling. Special guests Queen Latifah, Lizzo, Ben Platt all performed. The highlight of the fundraiser, though, a conversation between President Biden and former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. Discussion was moderated by late-night host Stephen Colbert. The presidents talk about a wide range of issues, including the war in Gaza and the need to protect our democracy. They also took some jabs at former president and presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump. The event was met with pro-Palestinian protesters, some of whom interrupted that conversation among the presidents. A large group also marched outside of Radio City Music Hall, calling for an end to the war in Gaza. Let's bring in White House correspondent for Reuters, Jeff Mason. He was one of the few reporters inside Radio City for last night's event. Jeff, good morning. Thanks for stopping through on your way out of town after the event last night. Take us inside the room, if you could. What was it like during that event?
My pleasure, Willie. It was electric in that room. There were more than 5,000 people in Radio City Music Hall. So a lot of bodies, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, especially to see, I think, the former presidents and, of course, President Biden. They came onto stage by being sort of lifted up with one of those platforms that comes up. So it was a very rock star moment, and it was a rock star night for the Democrats and for President Biden. They had a long discussion with Colbert, as you mentioned, about everything from peace in the Middle East to the economy. And the former presidents really laid out a case for Biden. We've been hearing Biden lay out his own case, but last night what he did was he sort of sat aside and let his predecessors talk about what it's like to be president and why he should get a second term.
I mean, $26 million, Jeff, such a staggering sum for one night. And it just adds to an already significant and growing cash advantage that Biden and the Democrats have over Trump and the Republicans. As Willie noted, there were some protests outside and some interruptions inside the hall as well about the war in Gaza. Tell us how the presidents, particularly President Obama, handled this and whether you think that could almost be a blueprint for President Biden going forward, because this issue is not going away.
It's certainly not going away. And it's been dogging President Biden throughout this campaign politically. I thought it was interesting to see how President Obama responded. He was giving a response about Gaza and was interrupted and said, look, you have to listen, not just talk. And that was a moment that really resonated with the crowd. He was kind of sharp in a way that we haven't seen Biden be sharp. And I understand that the president is tried to show a lot of understanding for the people who disagree with his policy. He's said before, let them talk. They feel passionately about this, and they do. And it's an important part of the president's coalition that he's trying to get back before November. But Obama and Clinton laid out reasons for the people who have maybe moved away from Biden to come back. And one of them was saying, President Biden, in a way that President Trump probably would not be, is an advocate for Palestinians, has been pushing really hard for a two-state solution, and will continue to do.
Let's stop it here.
And President Biden also.
Welcome to a special edition of CJ on Saturdays. What do we call it? RBN Saturdays with CJ. I try to, when Nick takes a Saturday off, I try to fill in that Saturday because we have an audience that's used to seeing content, live content at this time. So I try to, when I can, and last time I don't think I could cover it, but this time I was able to cover it and also book a pretty decent guest. I would say a pretty fire guest. We love to have him on in his analysis. But in particular, this time, what we're talking about, protests in particular, protesting the president, I felt like he was the right person to have. I also reached out to Chuck Modi, but guess what he said? He said, I'm actually covering more protests today. So that's the reason why he was not able to make it, because there's more protests that's out in D.C., and he's covering that today. But my first guest that I'm going to be bringing on, he's a regular here on RBN. He was able to find somebody who has been participating or involved with the college protests. So when we get to that segment, we're going to be bringing that guest on. But let's bring on our regular guest. But for those that may not know him, he's a professor at Columbia and at Adelphi. I think I always say one of those wrong. The TEDx speaker, anti-capitalist, anti-fascist, anti-war, anti-violence, trauma expert. I call him the professor sometimes, but he always says call him Anthony. So this is Professor Anthony. Let's say it that way, Professor Anthony. Let's bring him on. What's up? How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's going on? Got to adjust myself so I look good.
There you go.
Got to get that ring light going. The ring light is where it's at.
My sister told me about that. I got to get myself one because sometimes when it's not as a bright day, it's kind of dim in here. But go ahead.
But the ring light is great. Look at Carrie Lake. She's got filters, ring lights. I mean, that thing takes 10 years.
She does.
It's great.
Yeah, she does.
You know, she's shit otherwise. But I have to agree with you. I am pretty decent. So I don't mind being referred to that way. This way we don't set the expectations too high. But
right.
But I want to know what the heck, man? What's Nick doing today? Where is Nick? Is he sleeping in? I need to know.
No, what how he has the schedule is he has scheduled mental breaks. So when he does Saturday, he does every Saturday, but one Saturday a month he takes off. And
That's
then
good.
I come in and try to fill in when I can. It doesn't always happen, but when I can, I try to come in and fill in that spot. And the reason I just stopped in the middle, because I'm gonna refresh this. It kept glitchy. I'm not sure why. So I'm gonna refresh it because I want to watch this part without the glitches. And we're getting right into it, Anthony. And we're starting out with just going over basically cable news coverage of the fundraiser by Biden, and it's been dubbed the the Obama fundraiser. It's so funny how they refer to it as this is some sort of like this is an Obama event, and then like Biden is like
President Biden also, President Obama also made an interesting statement.
But just to kind of give an overall before we get started here, what I have written down, I write down what I have as a sort of a monologue to get started, and that is Barack Obama is a closer. We are in the ninth inning. So we're going to use a baseball we can use other references in other sports, but this would be like bringing in your closer in baseball, the guy you bring in about the 6th or 7th inning to close the game, to secure. He's strong, but he can only be strong for a certain amount of a number of pitches. This would be like bringing that person in the 2nd inning, and not only that person, they're bringing in 2 closers. So you're bringing in 2 closers because Clinton closed for Obama back when in his reelection, if we remember. And then, of course, Obama closed for Biden back in 22. So if you're bringing in your closers at this point, that's a telltale sign that things are not going well. And not only that is that things are not going well, but you have to have all hands on deck, including your wild card on the table for the rest of the cycle. And we're talking about what, 8 or 9 months, Anthony. But what is your overall sort of analysis, reaction to this event, and just what do you want to say in the beginning before we get started?
Well, I mean, there's 2 things that you have to look at. Of course, look at the polls and the average of polls. Side note, past couple of weeks, Biden's had a little bit of a bump, right?
Yes.
But when you look at the trajectory, it's not great. So always look at the polls, but also remember to look at what they do. And I think you're pointing that out very clearly here, because they have internal polling. And if their internal polling is solid, they're not doing a Bill Clinton, Barack Obama fundraiser
Right.
in New York City.
Right.
They know from the people who work on these campaigns are smart and have worked on many campaigns. And when the internals don't look good, that's when they start pulling out the stops. You know, you might expect to see Obama on the trail. That wouldn't be unusual. Bill Clinton,
Yes.
on the other hand, has too many negatives, so you know he's not going to be on the trail as much or at all. But now it's March, and you're right, it is like the second inning, and the fact that they're doing this is just, to me, again,
About saying
Go
want,
ahead. That was an accident. Go ahead.
they want to explain to us because they know, you know, look, Obama, I think if they looked at polls, he has high trust numbers or favorability numbers. You know, he's not the rock star he was, but he probably still has high favorables. I'm sure he does. So if he explains what's going on, then maybe we'll realize, well, you know, the genocide's okay. Barack says it's cool. We're doing our best, and he explained it very nicely. And I think that is the key thing that they're worried about. They're also worried about the economy. Economy is not good. It remains, prices remain extremely high. People are suffering. They wanted somebody who has high favorabilities to speak. And also, they wanted money. You know, the 26 million is a pretty big haul.
Going to help
They're
trick
going to need
people.
it.
It is telling to me, though, Anthony, that the conversations on, you know, researching this topic, the conversations are so giddy about our elections being bought off around, look at this. He's breaking records of corruption, records of bribery. But to me, it was so bizarre the way they talked about it. And I'll show everybody what I mean in another clip. But let's start here, just as a baseline of covering the entire event. And what I have listed as what stood out for me for this clip is cable news thinks Barack Obama scolding pro-Palestinian protesters is a good thing, or is a good strategy to win them over. That's what I have written down for this segment. So that's why I want to make sure we get in it. Let's listen to this segment here. Oops, I'll put the volume back on.
And $26 million at the event.
Wow.
5,000 people attended. It was hosted by actor and comedian Mindy Kaling. Special guests Queen Latifah, Lizzo, Ben Platt all performed. The highlight of the fundraiser, though, a conversation between President Biden and former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. Discussion was moderated by late-night host Stephen Colbert. The presidents talk about a wide range of issues, including the war in Gaza and the need to protect our democracy. They also took some jabs at former president and presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump. The event was met with pro-Palestinian protesters, some of whom interrupted that conversation among the presidents. A large group also marched outside of Radio City Music Hall, calling for an end to the war in Gaza. Let's bring in White House correspondent for Reuters,
Absolutely.
Jeff Mason. He was one of the few
This
reporters
is
inside Radio
YouTube
City.
TV, so it's a different way to freeze it. Go ahead.
Can you freeze it? Just back it up to the crowd.
Oh, absolutely.
That last couple of frames, it was a little closer up.
Okay, I'm gonna let it play. Then it does it in 15-second increments. So this is not YouTube. It's a little bit different. Let me let it
play. And
then talk about a wide range of issues, including the war in Gaza and the need to protect our democracy. They also took some jabs at former president and presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump. The event was met with pro-Palestinian.
Like right here or further back?
Let it go just a second.
Protesters, some of whom interrupted that conversation among the presidents. A large group also marched outside of Radio City Music Hall.
Yeah, right there. Look at that crowd. Look at that crowd. First of all, it's massive. And it was on a moment's notice. You know, people didn't have weeks ahead of time.
And it's raining.
And what do I see in that crowd? I see people who look like Obama's base in 2008.
Yes.
Democrats have lost that base. You know, that demographic, those demographics, young people, black and brown people, women. We are told all the time, if you don't vote for Biden, I mean, he's blatantly said it. You're not black. He said that. But if we don't vote for Biden, that means we don't care about queer folk. It means we don't care about women's rights and girls. It means we don't care about black and brown people. And for those that don't know, who may be sharing this, right here, that is one of the most intersectional crowds you'll ever see. And people are aware. So here's Obama telling people, just listen. See, he could do that in 2012. Yes, of course we had the internet in 2012. But it wasn't what it is today with the sharing of content. Because back then, still, the biggest news source for people was either network news or cable news. It's no longer the case for most voters that they're trying to get. So you can say, just listen, and we can say, we are just as much of an expert as you are, Barack Obama, because we're looking at the videos of children having their limbs blown off on a daily basis. We're not getting intelligence briefings. We don't need to. We see what's going on. So really, for the arrogance, and I've always thought he was arrogant, but the arrogance of a president when there was a popular protest movement, a former president to sit there and tell folks, just listen, when a majority of Democrats want an immediate permanent ceasefire, a majority of Americans do, when a little more than half of Democrats believe Israel's credibly committing genocide. The Biden 2020 voters, half of them believe it's a genocide. When your base is saying this and your response is just listen, no, you should be listening to us. And the distance that exists between folks, regular people like us, and their representatives continues to widen. That is an underlying issue, whether it's Gaza or food and rent prices or why they can't raise the minimum wage and all that stuff. Those things matter. But ultimately, people on both sides and in the middle, independents, apolitical people as well, have come to the conclusion, most of us have, that our government is not responsive to us. And Barack Obama chiding a protester or a bunch of protesters who stood up and said, you have blood on your hands, Joe Biden. His response of just listen was basically him putting his hands on his ears and saying, I don't want to listen to you. And we don't need to listen to you. Look at these people.
And he's saying, we don't need to listen to you, and you're going to do what we tell you to do, and that is come out and vote for Biden. That is who Obama's role. But let's play this video, and we'll comment some more at the end.
Calling for an end to the war in Gaza. Let's bring in White House correspondent for Reuters,
Not a war.
Jeff Mason. He was one of the few reporters inside Radio City for last night's event. Jeff, good morning. Thanks for stopping through on your way out of town after the event last night. Take us inside the room if you could. What was it like during that event?
My pleasure, Willie. It was electric in that room. There were more than 5,000 people in Radio City Music Hall. So a lot of bodies, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, especially to see I think the former presidents and, of course, President Biden, they came onto stage by being sort of lifted up with one of those platforms
they're
that comes
God,
up. So it was
I
a very
guess.
rock star moment, and it was a rock star night for the Democrats and for President Biden. They had a long discussion with Colbert, as you mentioned, about everything from peace in the Middle East to the economy. And the former presidents really laid out a case for Biden. We've been hearing Biden lay out his own case, but last night what he did was he sort of sat aside and let his predecessors talk about what it's like to be president and why he should get a second term.
I mean, $26 million, Jeff, such a staggering sum for one night. And it just adds to an already significant and growing cash advantage that Biden and the Democrats have over Trump and the Republicans. As Willie noted, there were some protests outside and some interruptions inside the hall as well about the war in Gaza. Tell us how the presidents, particularly President Obama, handled this, whether you think that could almost be a blueprint for President Biden going forward, because this issue is not going away.
So this is where... So not only do they like what Obama said, they're saying they like it so much, maybe this should be a blueprint, Anthony, to the point that you were making about his response. You kind of already gave, let us know what you think. I'm going to give you another chance to comment on further, but let's listen to more about their opinion, Anthony, about how Obama talked to the protesters. And it's so arrogant. You've already kind of talked about it, but it's so arrogant.
It's certainly not going away, and it's been dogging President Biden throughout this campaign politically. I thought it was interesting to see how President Obama responded. He was giving a response about Gaza and was interrupted and said, look, you have to listen, not just talk. And that was a moment that really resonated with the crowd. He was kind of sharp in a way that we haven't seen Biden be sharp. And I understand that the president has tried to show a lot of understanding for the people who disagree with his policy. He's said before, let them talk. They feel passionately about this, and they do. And it's an important part of the president's coalition that he's trying to get back before November. But Obama and Clinton laid out reasons for the people who have maybe moved away from Biden to come back. And one of them was saying President Biden, in a way that President Trump probably would not be, is an advocate for Palestinians, has been pushing really hard for a two-state solution, and will continue to do that. And President Biden also...
Do you understand? I like how Rome started to describe what they're talking about right here. This is a threat. This is them saying, if you don't vote for us, we're not even going to throw the Palestinian crumbs as an empire.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're saying right here. So understand, everybody, this is a threat that they're making when they say stuff like this, is that because how we would describe it is that he's doing nothing for them. It's all rhetoric. And they're saying, listen, we're not going to do more than rhetoric. And if that's not good enough for you, you're not even going to get rhetoric with Trump. It's a threat. Go ahead if you were going to chime in. I couldn't see you. It sounded like you were talking.
Yeah, the Abraham agreements that Trump hammered out, which Obama was, Biden was continuing. And they were going to get Saudi Arabia and other states to normalize relationship with Israel without a guarantee of a Palestinian homeland. So when they say Biden has been fighting for a two-state solution, he's barely mentioned it his entire presidency. In fact, he only started really talking about it when the heat started getting turned up because of what Israel was doing in Gaza. I wish they could have a two-state solution. That ship sailed 20 years ago, right? It's impossible now. But it's just a blatant lie to say he's been fighting for it. He didn't give a shit about it. Neither did Obama, because all of them, if they really wanted a two-state solution, all they had to do is call up the prime minister of Israel. Obama could have done it. Biden could have done it. On day one, we will slow down to a complete stop all approvals for weapons shipments to Israel unless you sit down at the table. and hammer out a solution. They could have done it. They don't want a two-state solution. So first of all, that's a lie. And Barack Obama, you know, here's a guy who's used to being loved. He's used to the rock star life. You got to remember, the people that campaigned for him in 2008, that was 16 years ago.
Yeah. Those people aren't young anymore.
No, and you don't have it. And the current, you know, I don't attribute it all to TikTok, but the current, you know, this TikTok generation, they have no allegiance. I've heard students speak out at rallies and say things like, you know, I voted for Hillary because I'm a Democrat and I wanted the first woman president, and I figured she's liberal, I'm liberal. I had no idea of her history with Libya, with Central America, on and on. And I would never vote for her now. If I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't do it. There's no allegiance. And these three men in the bubble don't get it. Well, Joe Biden has no idea what's going on, but Obama doesn't. And then, of course, we'll talk more about the
Yeah. So let's listen a little more. We're almost done with this. I just want to finish off with Joe Scarborough's opinion about what Obama said, because he gets real giddy about it.
President Obama also made an interesting statement about saying there can't be a purity test. And he spoke about that from his perspective of having been in the White House.
You know, Gene,
there can't be a purity test for genocide, guys.
Right.
This is inevitably what voting for lesser of two evils gets you, because each time you vote in the future, it is a worser, lesser of two evils, and it's a worser. Now we're at genocide, and they're saying a genocide that is a litmus test, and we can't have that.
Nope.
Babies dying, Anthony. That's not a litmus test we can have.
We are basically, but that statement, we can't have a purity test, is a euphemism for we have no values. We have no consistent values. Don't hold us to them. Don't even try to talk about holding us to them. And if they're going to go with that purity test, well, then why not vote for Trump? You know, why? Well, we can't have a purity test on our democracy then. You know, like what? It's just on its face so transparent that they stand for nothing except themselves. And the media celebrating Barack Obama, telling people basically to shut up, like, you know, don't talk, listen. Basically, they're celebrating the government saying, we don't want to hear from you. So how is that the party that's going to save democracy? They don't want to even hear from their own base. They are contemptuous, the Democratic Party, of democracy.
Absolutely. And let's look.
just hearing about what President Obama did last night, it does remind me how great he is at this. I remember at the, if there was a sort of height of wokeism, and I don't say that to trigger anybody, I just use that term because, you know, 2017, 2018, 2019 was sort of peak wokeism. Of course, Trumpers will say that they're all coming to eat our bones one day soon. But in the middle of, let's just say, the most pitched debate, maybe it's 2020, President Obama was at speaking at Nelson Mandela Day, an event. And he said, listen, if you don't let somebody debate and talk and say their words are invalid because they're white or because they're a man or because they're Hispanic or because they're black, well, you really don't have a real debate.
So I need for us, and I'm going to bring this down, I need for us to really understand what they're saying and what they're trying to equate.
I don't know.
they're trying. So what they're saying is, when you're in a debate talking with somebody who has, and I'm going to use the term legitimate arguments,
Right.
and you don't let that person talk, are you really engaging, trying to find a solution? They're saying when you do that to a Nazi, to a Zionist, it's the same thing. No, they're basically arguing that we're supposed to give baby killers equal footing in conversations. No, we are not supposed to do that. No, and it's pretty disgusting that they're using that as sort of an example of how it really goes, or the point of the matter. But go ahead if you're going to.
Why are you such a purist, Jay? God, yeah, they are saying, do not hold us to the things we say we stand for. You must give equal time. It's interesting, even with something completely different, the climate debate, the media was famous for this for years. Like 90-something% of scientists who've looked at climate know we are in a cycle of warming and it's caused by human behavior. It's not even debatable. But because there's a few that said, no, we don't believe it, and here's why, they're like, well, we got to give equal time to the other side. Not when the other side is thinly supported. You don't have to give equal time for everything. And notice, they never give equal time to things like, they don't say, well, we're going to talk about the economy, and to give equal time, we're going to have on a socialist. They never do that. They want to give equal time to people, to settler colonialism. That's what it's about. And the UN Special Rapporteur, Human Rights, Albanese, right, who the administration is called an anti-Semite. I mean, this woman's got an impeccable reputation, and she called it a genocide. But she referred to what's going on as settler colonialism. They never give the other side to the things they don't want you to hear. They only want to give the other side, quote unquote, when they want to look balanced, as if there should ever be a debate. Would you have a debate on the Holocaust? No. There's nothing about it that was okay. Talking to the Nazi Holocaust. I mean, would you have a debate on slavery today? No. So why are we having a debate on whether it's okay to ethnically cleanse an entire people, which is exactly what's happening?
That is a great point. And what I want to do now is go to and give sort of fair, I guess you can say, play to the conservative side.
Hope there's no capricious activity at the wrestling match. Ugh, the new vocabulary word everyday habit is so much better than the drinking water habit.
But Lynn, isn't the whole point of the 21-day habit thing to stick with it for
all
21?
Right. So what I want to do is bring up. So what's her name? Her name is Faulkner. She's on Fox News. But anyway, she had on a guy who. Hang on a second. Falk. There we go.
Could
Faulkner
you hear that?
Did you? Oh, so you did. You were able to hear the talking and everything.
Yeah, it's
okay. Now. I thought I was the only one able to hear that. Okay, so I took that down. That was you couldn't see it, but it was a pop up on my screen and it had sound.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so you couldn't see it, but apparently you guys could hear it. So anyway, so let me just introduce this next part here before we bring in our next guest. And that is, this is the conservative side. I like to get, I went to MSNBC and give you sort of the Democratic side. I'm not going to say left, the Democratic side, because they're not left. And then now I'm going to give you the conservative version. And it's at 31. And this, when I say unhinged, Anthony, this is pretty unhinged, and I thought it had to be included here. So let's go back to right about here. All right, so let's listen. Conservative side on the same issue.
I do not hear anything.
Oh, my bad.
Just letting you know.
Again, I'm not looking at the screen. Sorry. Here we go now. So let's bring this back up. Again, this is the Faulkner Focus. This is for the editor. Let me just restate this. This is the Faulkner Focus.
A Fox News show?
Yeah, yeah, this is a Fox News show. If you haven't seen it, we don't cover her as much. I mean, most of her coverage is really unserious coverage, culture war sort of stuff. She's sort of like a Laura Ingraham, a black version of Laura Ingraham. Oh, really, no. That's really what she is. If you could imagine that in your head. I don't mean to bring you that much trauma, but try to imagine that. And so that's the perspective of this segment. But the guest she brings on is completely unhinged.
Shame on you, Joe Biden! Shame on you! Shame on you! You are funding genocide in Palestine, and no amount of full concern that you do will change the billions that you are doing! You get blood on your hands!
All right. Love it.
Yeah, love it too.
Anti-Israel protesters crashing President Biden's star-studded fundraising shindig that included former Presidents Obama.
Oh yeah, she had somebody sub for her, so this is not Faulkner. So you're not going to see her. So just to correct that, this is somebody I just remember somebody filled in for her.
And Clinton, they interrupted the event multiple times. Obama even scolded them at one point, saying, "quote, you can't just talk and not listen. That's what the other side does." Biden facing lots of backlash over his Israel policies, much of it from within his own party and his own administration. Another State Department employee announced her resignation, joining two others who have left. She explained it this way.
I think as it became clear what U.S. policy was going to be as far as enabling the ongoing military operations in Gaza, as well as the intentional use of starvation as a weapon, I was initially just going to resign quietly. I just didn't want to be part of this government anymore. But as I started to let colleagues know of my intention, they said, please speak for us. Please use your voice.
A Democrat-aligned Jewish group is endorsing primary challengers to two progressive squad members, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, over their anti-Israel rhetoric. It's the first time the organization has moved against Democratic incumbents. On the other side, House Republicans accused the Biden administration of undermining Israel in its war against Hamas by abstaining from a vote on a UN resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. They, along with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, argue the move has emboldened Hamas. And just this week, a Hamas leader said the terror group will not release any hostages unless Israel complies with its demands. Mark Thiessen, Fox News contributor and former White House speechwriter, is here.
This guy right
Mark,
here.
how do you see this playing out here in the election? There's also an Alan Dershowitz piece about Joe Lieberman's last words to Joe Biden about in a editorial he wrote about how Joe Biden's going to lose Jewish Democrat voters.
What's up with those shoulders?
Voters generally. I mean, there was a.
What did you say?
What's up with that? It's like a yellow spacesuit with like big wing shoulders. Do they not have anybody to tell her? Like
their dress on Fox News is a little out there sometimes. This is not the first time you'll see somebody on there like that. But let's continue.
Harris poll that just came out that said 56% of Americans think that Biden is more concerned with domestic politics and what's best for Israel and the world when it comes to this policy. He's seen as pandering to this anti-Semitic minority on the left. And, you know, he was standing on that stage with Bill Clinton. Why didn't he take a page out of Bill Clinton's playbook and have a sister soldier moment? Why didn't he turn to those protesters and say, you know why there's so many civilian casualties in Gaza? Because Hamas uses civilians as human shields, because Hamas launched a terrorist attack against Israel, and it is responsible for all the civilian deaths taking place in Gaza today. And the United States stands 100% behind Israel in its campaign to liquidate and remove Hamas from.
So I wanted to get to that point there because Anthony, and I'm going to bring in our guest in just a second here. If we are a voter who don't want to support a genocide, who do we vote for? Because we just heard Obama scold protesters who don't want to support this genocide and saying, hey, you got to let us talk. Basically saying, give me the opportunity to fool you with my smooth voice to trick you into supporting a genocide. That's basically what he wants you to do. And then we go, wait a minute, we don't want them. So you go, let's flip over to Fox News. Let's see if they have somebody who's anti-genocide. Then you turn over there. Then you see on there, Anthony, you see them critiquing Joe Biden as if he's too soft.
Yeah.
As you protest him for being too hard. But go ahead.
They had to etch out their lane because they can't say we agree with Biden, but they agree with Biden. They agree with Obama. The bottom line is they might look like they're at odds a little bit, but both parties and both sides of the, Democrat, Republican aligned media are all in agreement. When they say he didn't go hard enough, that's, they got to say something. Otherwise, they're going to sound like CNN or MSNBC, who was cheering him on. But they all stand for the same exact things. There is no difference in how Republican and Democrat aligned media and Republican and Democrat politicians view this issue. There isn't, and just one quick thing, because I know before you bring on your other guest, who I'm excited to meet, they had Bill Clinton on there, and not enough was made of this. Bill Clinton doesn't do a lot of appearances for a reason. He was identified in the documentary on Epstein by a groundskeeper. I mean, this is all public. There's no secrets here. There's nothing bombshell about it. At being at Epstein's Island, he flew on Epstein's plane 24 times. He was Bill Clinton has been credibly accused of the violent rape of Juanita Broaddrick. And I hear, the Biden supporters online will say, Anita Broaddrick, look at her tweet. Yeah, Anita Broaddrick is a raging conservative. I don't think I agree with anything she says politically. But, since when do we get to decide what political affiliations a rape survivor must have? That is just the biggest anti-woman, anti-survivor thing I've ever heard. So this guy, Bill Clinton's a full-fledged misogynist. And when the Democratic Party has him walk out on stage, they are telling you, we never cared about women and girls, let alone Biden, who's got his own list of credible allegations of significant sexual assault by Tara Reid, who worked for him at the time, and 7 women who came out and said that he inappropriately touched them. One said he harmed them. She was 19 at the time. So, you see who these characters are. The media never talks about it. So, that's why RBN exists and all the other independent shows. It's a shit show. By the way, I was thinking this. I guarantee not everybody paid for a ticket to go to that place. I am sure they're recruiting their paid young influencers who they're putting on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter too.
Yeah, the Harry guy put out a tweet. I'll show it later, but the Harry guy put out a tweet and saying that it was a fantastic event and it was 3 of the greatest presidents to ever live. But let's bring in our guest. But I'm going to let you describe how we were able to book this guest, and then just the situation before I bring her on.
So, yes, I teach at Columbia in the School of Social Work, and Columbia University in New York, whose sister school, I don't know if that's how it's officially referred to, Barnard, which is part of the Columbia, under the Columbia umbrella. Faculty, staff, and students who have been standing up against the ethnic cleansing and bloody genocide of the human people who live in Gaza and the West Bank, have been met with a lot of obstacles when it comes to free speech, on campus and off campus as well. And so I do have a network of folks that I reach out to who are doing some really great work and putting wonderful lectures together, who are involved in the protest movements, and who can offer a little more insight into what's going on campus and off campus. And also, Shayoni, if I'm saying your name right, Mitra, who's going to be joining us, does some very interesting things with alternatives to street, not instead of, but things to do in addition to street protest, using art and expression, because we've got to get our message out across all aspects of life in a multidimensional way. There's many ways that we can do this, and she's got some unique insight into that, and also because she teaches on Barnard campus, some insight into some of the ways that free speech has been suppressed. Just a reminder, they changed rules. The schools changed the rules about how to have an event just when Free Palestine or ceasefire now protesters started popping up, because they didn't want our voices there. So, and I think Shayoni just sent you a website if you want to check that out. But
yeah, I have that link up. But let's bring on Shayoni. I believe that's the right way. Yeah,
I'm hoping she'll tell us.
Yeah, how are you doing, Shayoni?
Hi, Jay. Hi, Anthony. Thanks for having me. And it's Shayoni. So Shayoni.
We were both wrong. It's all my fault.
Yes. So the Y is an I. Okay, there we go. So we got it. So Shayoni, can you tell us just sort of like what are the sort of work you do, your experience on campus, like what are you seeing on campus in this debate about whether it's free speech versus anti-Semitism that's going on these college campuses? So if you could speak to any of that, please.
Thank you. And yes, all of it, actually, in terms of just how Barnard and Columbia have been, in some senses, really a battleground around these issues, around campus protest, academic freedom, free speech. We have a task force on anti-Semitism, which hasn't defined what anti-Semitism is. But, all of this, I think, has really been brought to a head since October 7th, and very quickly when our student groups, SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, and Jewish Voices for Peace, JVP, sort of started having protests on campus, and there were counter-protests. But things really came to a head, I think November 10th is when Columbia suspended these two student groups for a walkout the day before on November 9th, citing unauthorized protest. And sort of at the time, they had used this language of these student groups were using threatening and intimidating rhetoric. Since then, they've sort of backed away from that claim a little bit, because when pressed to say exactly what is intimidating or threatening, they haven't really been able to define it. The VP, Gerald Roseberg, was asked this at the Columbia Senate, and he kind of, wouldn't provide examples. But the fact is that those student groups still remain suspended, even though the events policy that they were found in violation of was, as Anthony pointed out, changed before, without notifying anyone, without consulting all the shared governance procedures we have, including the faculty senate. They quietly changed the policy, found the groups to be in violation of them, suspended these groups. And since then, they've actually, in February, both Columbia and Barnard have issued new policies. But they have refused to reverse these suspensions of these student groups. So I think there has been a lot of organizing by students, faculty, and staff around these issues. There is now a Columbia Apartheid Divest, which has over 100, I think, last time I checked, about 130 sort of different groups on campus that have signed on. And so I think people are really, really concerned about all of these issues, both around Palestine. Why can't we say, why is even saying Palestine or saying certain slogans seen as threatening? And around broader questions of sort of academic speech and really freedom of expression.
And what I see from when I watch the protests on college campuses, and Anthony and I have been in conversation about this before, what I hear is just a lot of, I don't know if I would describe it as enthusiasm, but at least is enthusiasm for wanting to end this genocide. But I'm curious to hear what both of you, since both of you have experience in this area with this college campus anti-Semitism accusations. I want to hear what your reaction is to what Morning Joe says about this very topic. It's sort of off the wall, but let's listen, because this is what the Israel lobby wants to push against what's actually going on, which is just young people wanting to stop a genocide. And the phrases they're using to articulate that they want to stop this genocide is scary to Zionists, because it kind of interrupts their colonial plan. But I do want both of you to hear this. It's probably about 2 or 3 minutes, and then just to get your reaction on their description of what they say is happening on college campuses.
We're talking about far-right anti-Semitism. Sad fact is we have it on the far right. We have it on the far left. And we have it, and I hear it all the time on college campuses. It has gotten so extreme on many college campuses. I've heard firsthand, you can't even talk about a two-state solution without being accused of being a Zionist. You can't talk about peace between the Palestinians and the Jews without being called a Zionist. Jonathan Chait wrote this for New York Magazine. This week, the president of the main pro-Palestinian student group at the University of Michigan shared and then deleted a social media message saying this: "Until my last breath, I will utter death to every single individual who supports the Zionist state. Death and more. Death and worse." University sent an email denouncing the message. While she may be an undergrad, this student's hardly anonymous. She was one of 4 undergraduates to receive the University of Michigan's Dr. Martin Luther King Spirit Award, honoring students, quote, "who best exemplify the leadership and extraordinary vision of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr." It's absolutely bizarre. There's nobody that is less in line with the message of Dr. Martin Luther King than somebody that would talk about death and more, death and worse. Last month, the New York Times jointly profiled her and a pro-Israel activist in a story presenting both as searching for common humanity. As dusk neared, they walked alone to a nearby campus building and sat together on a bench. Maybe this would be the chance to recognize one another's humanity, the Times reported. He needed to know why anti-Israel protesters had not forcefully condemned the deaths of Israeli civilians. And as Jonathan Chait said, I think that mystery has been cleared up. And Donnie, you cannot, on college campuses, on elite college campuses, it is hard to even bring up what happened on October 7th without being called a Zionist. It is hard for a student to not get canceled if they bring up the horrors of what happened on October 7th. There is in so many of these groups on college campuses, and I've seen it firsthand, I've heard about it firsthand, there's not just a plea, and I think a plea that we would all agree with, to save civilian lives in Gaza. There is an underlying hatred for Israel that's been there for years. I talked about turning.
And I'm going to pause it here because there's a lot to take in there. And I will start with our guest. You're not considered a guest, Anthony. Right now, you're a co-host. So I'll start with our guest to get your reaction. It does what Morning Joe says here in this segment so far, and I'm gonna back up in a little bit because they go on and say more. Donnie Deutsch, does it ring true to what you're seeing, and how would you react to, or how would you respond to what Joe says there? Joe Scarborough says there.
I think, firstly, recognizing that what he is saying is part of a larger tactic, which is this constant feeling that there is unchecked sort of anti-Semitism and calls for violence against Israel or Israeli supporting students. And I would say, look at our example. We have a task force on anti-Semitism, which has a lot of resources put behind it, by the way, institutional resources. But we do not have a commensurate task force on anti-Arab, Palestinian, or Muslim hate. And one of the things we have to keep sort of reiterating is a lot of students are facing hate attacks, violence, bullying, and none of us condone any of it. But when you put institutional resources behind investigating only certain kinds of claims and not those made by pro-Palestinian students, pro-Arab students, pro-Muslim students, who are facing incredible threatening, not just rhetoric, but actually violence, then what are your institutional commitments to the entire student body or this safety of everybody? And, we have, they will say that there are sort of ways of registering complaints. We have, at the Barnard side of it, we have been given some data, and they seem to be roughly the same number of complaints. But we're not seeing the same institutional commitments to investigating all sort of threats. I will say, at the Barnard side, we saw a transit workers union letter that the president of the transit workers union wrote on behalf of public safety at Barnard College, because 4 public safety officers complained against their supervisor, saying that one of the things that has happened since November is we have militarized our campuses. We have shut down gates, we've put up barriers, we've made it swipe entry, and this has all been under the sort of broader sort of really concern out of safety. Even though it's been pointed out numerous times that kind of militarized surveillance sort of strategy only makes our Black and brown students more vulnerable, right? Who doesn't feel invited or comfortable when they see a phalanx of NYPD standing outside your gates? So we've pointed this out many, many times. But this transit workers union sort of letter to our president said that, one of these supervisors at one of these gate checks had made a remark saying, we should, there were a couple of our students wearing hijab, saying, well, they should remove it. And not only did this supervisor not get chastised, her reportees, these public safety officers, had to raise this issue through their union. Mm-hmm. Why is that not on Morning Joe? Why are so many other questions around our students who are facing equal amounts of harassment or death threats or doxing? We're just not hearing those. So I think part of this is really just how one-sided it is, and people really are able to see how one-sided this is.
That is a great point. And Anthony, I'll bring you in for your reaction. Also, but I just don't know what their end game is. Like, do you believe the people who are protesting are eventually going to go, I am now for genocide, I am now for occupation? I don't understand what is their end game, even with all of these things that's not going to change consciousness, But Anthony, go ahead with your reaction to what was said on morning. Joe, if you remember, he he's basically describing anti-Semitism. I just don't, what he described, how his depiction of things is just not what I personally have seen on a college campuses of USC and UCLA with some protests that I've seen. I just haven't seen. What say you? What is your reaction to Joe Scarborough's description of what's happening on college campuses?
This is not unlike the messaging of George W. Bush during the wars against the people of Iraq and Afghanistan, and then which eventually were broadened throughout the Middle East region, when he basically said, anybody who questions what we're doing there, you're anti-American. So it's this very simplistic, jargonistic way of looking at freedom of expression and different viewpoints. Now the messaging is, and Morning Joe is, encapsulating that in everything they do. If you question Israel, if you question the government of Israel, if you question their apartheid policies, you hate the Jews. Those two things, I mean, we have to keep saying this. The majority of people who identify, and also identifying correctly, labeling somebody who believes in Zionism, which is a political philosophy, identifying them as a Zionist is now a slur. This is literally what they believe. If you believe in what you believe and you believe you're right, stand up for it. Let's talk about it. Not even allowed to use the label. And what they're doing is, it's this, if you're not with us, you're against us. There needs to be pushback on this. Thankfully, we have social media. Thankfully, 19, 20, and 21-year-olds and beyond are on TikTok talking about this and saying this is ludicrous. What's very upsetting to me is that my campus and other campuses, which are supposed to be places where speech is freely given and where people debate issues, that's the whole idea of a university education, to be exposed to things that you're not necessarily comfortable with. And what they're basically saying is there's one form of acceptable speech and there's one type of acceptable victim. The speech that we prefer is speech that supports Israel no matter what their government and their military does to the people of Gaza and the people of the West Bank. Oh, and and to the people of Lebanon too. It's not forget.
Anthony, I'm sorry. I thought you were. Sorry to cut you off, but let me just ask you this question. I'm not meaning by the sheer asking of the question to point out your age or anything, but what would you say the last huge sort of college sustained protest was the Vietnam War? And what was the state reaction to that? Because I don't have a recollection of that. Like, what do you recall it being sort of these clamped down sort of measures, these repressive sort of measures? But go ahead.
I'm not that old, Jay. But I was very.
But even if you know it knowledgeable, you may have read about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's just say the National Guard in Ohio at Kent State University shot and killed 4 peaceful protesting students who were protesting against the war in Vietnam. They were beating them with those wooden sticks, those clubs. They were hosing people. So that reaction was very, very virulent, contrasted with the reaction of students who in the 1980s organized against the apartheid system of South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
We were not met with the same type of derision, and there was a very successful divestment movement which worked. South Africa is no longer an apartheid state. Nelson Mandela was released from prison and became president of that nation, a nation which he was in prison for like 27 years. So, and he was labeled a terrorist by the United States. That divestment movement didn't get that same type of pushback. What we're seeing here is there's only one type of speech allowed, and that is speech that is in agreement with the genocide, ethnic cleansing, war crimes that are going on daily perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, more so in Gaza now, but there's a lot going on in the West Bank too, the media doesn't like to talk about. And also, there's only one kind of acceptable victim. Let me just clearly say, and we shouldn't have to say this, and we all agree on this, like, if anybody's a victim of anti-Semitism is ugly. It's an ugly, horrendous, horrific thing. So is anti-Black racism, so is misogyny, so is anti-queer hate. We can go down the list of all those things that marginalize folks and dehumanize them. And Islamophobia, I prefer to use the term anti-Islamic or anti-Muslim or anti-Arab hate, is disgusting. These things, all types of hate, are horrible. When a university only has a task force to look at one of them, there is a very clear message. And the clear message is, you remember the Supreme Court in the 1800s with the decision that, Black Americans were 3/5 human. This is what we're talking about. The United States has engaged in wholesale slaughter in the Middle East, up to 1 million people killed in our multiple wars for years over the past 20 years. And now we're supporting this genocide and we're arming it. And Biden sent weapons to them every 36 hours. He just sent 1,800.
Yeah, I was going to say, he just sent
6,000-pound bunker buster bombs, which will be used, hopefully not. I mean, maybe there'll be a miracle, but they are intended to do to Rafah what Israel has done to the entire north, mid, and south of Gaza. We know that's what's happening. We're not allowed to talk about that on campus. We've got students that are being chided by their professors for using a Palestinian flag emoji in a group chat. Like, when I hear students say in the lawsuit that came forward, the university isn't keeping us safe, they're saying, because we're hearing chants from the river to the what. And I don't know what your algorithm does here, so I'm just trying to be conscious of YouTube.
Thank you for doing
Palestine,
that.
Right? I don't need. It's not the job, and I tell this to my students. My job is not to make you feel safe. I want you to be safe, right? But you're not unsafe in hearing things you don't like. There's a particular professor in the business department, and I'm not even going to say his name just because he likes it when his name gets said, so we won't do it, who's freaking out about all these campus protests. Like, I'm from New York City, right? I've lived in New York my whole life. How many times have I walked by people who are protesting or saying things I don't like or agree with? This is New York. Walk across the street. You don't have to listen. You don't have to agree, but you don't get to shut down speech. And also, these students, and Shayoni, can talk about this, were attacked by other students with a chemical weapon that is banned in the United States, a military-grade weapon that only could have come from Israel, if it is indeed skunk water. That, the NYPD and the Columbia administration are still investigating. This is a terrorist attack. I mean, you can say what you want, but when you start engaging in that behavior and you don't keep those students safe, what precedent are you setting? It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to bring up the display. I had to put it into basically load it into the system. That's why it popped up, but I'll put it up now. This is the graphic or the image that you DM'd me, Shayoni. Did you want to go ahead and describe what it is and speak about it?
Yes. And this is, it picks up on everything Anthony is saying, is what is the difference between feeling unsafe and being unsafe? And this is a discussion that college administrators, in my mind, are refusing to have, because I think a really good example of this sort of a clampdown on freedom of expression and free speech on campus is this Barnard policy against decorations on dorm doors. And, you know, our Dean of Students sent out an email on, I believe, February 23rd, saying, you have a week, remove everything from your dorm doors, or we will remove it for you. And in that email, it basically said you have to remove everything. There is not any distinction because it was all seen as personal expression. And so it's a new policy of removing all signage from doors. Why? Because some doors had some stickers or slogans that made some other students feel uncomfortable, and they had to walk around those or take a different route. This has rightfully received, I think, you know, pushback from really all quarters. We have heard from students, of course, faculty, alumni. We have, you know, many social media posts on Instagram and others saying that, look, when I was in college, I was finding my identity. I was putting up flags. I was signaling things that I was becoming politically interested in. And that is part of the college process. And so to say that this is not a space for learning, this is not a space for self-exploration, this is not a space for sort of figuring things out, it's just so crazy. And so what I have, you know, and I share this obviously with permission, Izzy Lapidus is this amazing sort of Barnard Senior, they sent this to me because since November, a few of us have been running something called the Palestine Poetry Collective. And the idea really was, and, you know, maybe we'll have time to sort of share our website here, but the idea was that we're all going to protests, we're attending lectures, teach-ins, et cetera, but we need to have a space, a quiet, you know, and this goes back to how Anthony was sort of introducing me, that we can do both. We can go to protests, and we can also make spaces for slow learning, close reading, coming together. So we have been having these weekly, really congregations. It's very informal. Whoever wants to can drop in. We try and, you know, sit on the lawns, or when it was cold, we'd go to a lobby and we'd read together. And in one of those, we read this incredible poem, which is called Today My Body Was TV Massacred. And we read it together. And Izzy went back and she said, you know, I couldn't get this poem out of my mind. And so I felt compelled to write it out on this cardboard that I found lying around. And that's what she has on her dorm door. And to me, it is actually such a beautiful instance of student learning. You're learning something, you're processing it, you can't get it out of your mind. It's embodied knowledge where you're writing out poetry. Poetry, this is what we want our students to know. And instead, you're having a policy which says you must remove all of this. We are undoing the experiences that, you know, as faculty and staff, we're trying to give our students these experiences. Let's experience literature from different parts of the world. Let's find ways of finding art and other creative expression that has talked about genocidal violence, that has talked about settler colonialism, that has talked about the histories and deeply sort of violent histories of colonialism. Let's find safe and spaces of talking about these things. But when you remove all of these opportunities of learning, I think you're fundamentally going against what university education is supposed to do.
Absolutely.
This is what I mean. Like, I feel so strongly about this. That these kind of clampdowns are actually not making anybody safer. You are, in fact, you know, removing all of the risk and all of the beauty of encountering, you know, things that you didn't know before. That's why we go to university, not to have everything we like, affirmation that we already came in knowing, but we actually want to encounter new knowledge.
And also, oh, go ahead, Jay.
I was just gonna say the Zionist lobby. Like before this, I knew about AIPAC. I knew about, you know, just the Zionist, the broader Zionist lobby. I did not know they had this kind of power to just overnight have universities walk in lockstep with Zionist guardrails. Let's say that, like, the Zionists don't want to feel uncomfortable at college campuses, so they put these guardrails up. Take this off of your dorm room. Like, I remember being in college at Cal State Long Beach, and I remember as far as back as I was in high school, and I was in this college preparatory program where I would stay in dorms over the summer, and it was with college students and RAs and all that to give us the experience for what we was about to experience. And I remember that's distinctly. The dorm doors were all decorated and they were all different. That was people's, now that I look at it, I just thought, oh, it's unique, but no, that was the expression of whoever was living in that room. So that, that's my anecdotal story to that is being true. But go ahead, Anthony.
Sorry, and Jay, if I could add one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not only
Yeah, go ahead.
not only is it that they're asking students to remove these things, again, deputizing public safety officers to do this, who themselves may not necessarily feel that this is the way to do it, but they've also asked RAs to enforce this policy, and the RA union was not consulted, right? And they're like, we don't have training, we don't want to do this, but the administration top down is able to enact policy that then every other arm of the university is sort of corralled into navigating or policing for them. And there is no process to ask the community, is this for the betterment of the community? Do we have consensus? Do we agree? Is this what people want? And what we are hearing is nobody wants this policy. Nobody wants this policy, and yet it's being enforced.
And we all, just to be clear, there's one reason it's being enforced. Well, maybe two. One, they want to look good to the people that are complaining and making this big heyday about campus dissent. See, we're doing something. But also, what if a couple of students were offended? I'm seeing the same type of fragility around the issue of talking about the genocide and ethnic cleansing of Palestine as I did when folks were reacting with fragility to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
I know it makes you uncomfortable, but discomfort is not necessarily a bad thing. And by the way, you don't have to change your mind. But you are living on a planet with other people who are compassionate, loving, committed, and intelligent, and may see the world through a different lens than you. And I don't, nowhere have I seen anyone try to shut down the speech of those who support what's going on. Early on, when that particular professor that I've mentioned from the Columbia Business School was going on and on about things, he was targeting students. And I went on I don't do it anymore, but I went on his Twitter and I said, look, you can believe anything you want. Anyone's allowed to express themselves. Stop harassing students. There's another thing too, and that is sometimes all we have is our voice. The feeling of helplessness when you look at what's going on in the world can be very heavy, which is why what Shioni is talking about with these reading circles and poetry and support is so important, because I believe art heals and meeting and being part of community heals as well. But when we feel the weight of what is going on and we see images of people, we've all seen them. It's devastating. That feeling of helplessness, what can I do? Sometimes putting a flag or a poem on your dorm room door is the one way you can stand up and say, I am human. This is my heart. This is what I believe. And for the university to say, no, somebody might be uncomfortable with your humanity, with your expression, with the lens with which you look at the world, is the opposite of the mandate of what a university education is supposed to be about. And I think in very significant ways is traumatizing. And for all those who are defying it, who are defying these rules on a daily basis, what I call little rebellions. Thank you.
And this is, Jay, you started this segment saying, I didn't know that there was such powerful lobbies behind these kinds of things, right? We also have to go into this election cycle, and I agree with everything that was being sort of said before I joined, even of what really are our options if we are anti-genocidal in our politics. What options does the 2024 election sort of present for us? But let's also not be naive in thinking that this will be the only attack on higher ed. There will be, what if tomorrow, and we know these are coming, there is a slew of anti-LGBTQ legislation currently active in the country. There's a slew of anti-trans legislation currently in the country, and they have, powerful lobby money behind it. What if, and this is not far-fetched, this has happened obviously most sort of clearly in Florida, but it's going to happen elsewhere. What if that kind of speech gets sort of deemed problematic or hurtful to the sentiments of other students? Are we not going to put up trans flags? Are we not going to put up pride flags on our doors? Are we not going to say this is a safe space for students? We know we've faced this under Trump before, that we have undocumented students, workers, others in our community. And if there is another immigration ban, or if there's another Muslim ban, are we not allowed to show solidarity? This is, as Anthony was saying, sometimes that's all you can do, to say, look, I am human. I am here for my queer students. I'm here for my undocumented students. I am here for, the most vulnerable in our community. And if my signage is going to make someone feel uncomfortable, then that is a moment of conversation rather than shutting it down and saying, campus is not the space for it, right? So rather than actually doing the work of making conversation possible, even when it is uncomfortable, we're just shutting it down unilaterally, top down. And certainly, I don't think anyone with sort of the educational, pedagogical sort of good of the university will share that goal.
It's so anti-intellectual. How are you anti-intellectual at a college? That's so bizarre. But Anthony, I think you were gonna chime in. I heard you begin to speak, I believe. Yeah, go ahead.
Shaloni, I love the way you're saying what you're saying, and I'm so glad you agreed last minute to rearrange your day to be here. And so there's another level to this, and that's the absolute hypocrisy. VP Rosberg from Columbia University on camera was walking around New York City putting up posters of some of the hostages that were civilians captured by Hamas, which I will say, targeting and killing a civilian and taking a civilian hostage is a war crime. So maybe there are some on the left that disagree, but that's the definition, although Israel has done it far more. But it's never okay. And I have no problem with him putting up those pictures, except he was in violation of New York law. You can't just put posters anywhere you want in New York City. So when it's convenient for folks who are part and parcel to these suppression of free speech rules that keep getting made at the drop of a hat, mysteriously we just decided to do them. When you yourself are walking around breaking codes and laws in New York to get your viewpoint, by the way, I fully support it. Put a poster anywhere you want. I believe in freedom of speech. I have no problem with him doing that. But you're going to tell your own students they can't do it on their own damn dorm door? That is the ultimate hypocrisy. And then the message comes out, which is you can be free, but not fully. You can say anything you want except this. We believe in the humanity of Palestinians, but not fully. Our conversations where we want to talk about it, but not everything. It wasn't somebody banned. It's happened a couple of times from speaking at our university, Shayoni, at Columbia. about an event and they cancel the event. And so, but here's the thing, and I said this last time we talked about it, Jay. If I were advising the school, I would let them know what you're doing is dumb. Because if you really want to silence someone, don't suppress them. It only inflames things and it only makes us louder.
And, I think yes to all of this. And there's one crucial aspect that we haven't talked about yet, which I think is, again, so fundamental to how much is wrong right now on campuses, which is consistently at Barnard and Columbia, what we have seen is students are getting disciplined in ways that they haven't before. And this goes back to your question, Jay, of institutional knowledge. And we have really asked this of our colleagues who've been here longer. Do you remember students being called for disciplinary hearings during, most recently, as Anthony was saying, the anti-apartheid movement of the 80s? There has been divestment sort of referenda before. There has been climate activism before. There was a week in 2016 of student climate activists on low library steps. We certainly remember the movements around campus sexual assault in the early 2010s. In those times, students were not called into disciplinary hearings. And in the numbers and in the ways that we are seeing it now. We are, forget sort of the ability to even protest or counter-protest. Hillary Clinton was having, somewhere in February, she was having this panel on sexual violence. And two of our students and there were some disruptions, some students left, and two of our students got disciplinary notices for just leaving the event. And one of those students was having a health emergency. Since when are we going to sort of put disciplinary infractions on students for leaving something, or saying that this? So it's so one-sided. This, and we keep returning to this point of this clampdown on sort of free speech and academic expression is at levels we just have not encountered before. More than, within a weekend, more than 100 faculty wrote to our president saying, you are about to have disciplinary hearings starting next week. Please pause them and let us first, as faculty, have an ability to discuss this with administration. What are the infractions? What are these hearings going to achieve? Why are we employing a punitive model? As campuses, as New York City residents, we've been having discussions around restorative justice, not just since BLM, but for a long time. And here in the drop of a hat, we're throwing all of that work, decades of conversations and work out, and imposing this punitive model against students for dubious infractions. Firstly, we don't know, and we've had a lot of faculty accompany students to these hearings that are not hearings, that may be conversations, but are kept on the record, and then will be, firstly, there's not clarity around what is the purpose of this. They're framed as conversations, but then also we're told that, records are kept. But there is overwhelming consensus amongst faculty that we should have larger conversations before employing this punitive model of disciplinary sort of action against students. But we don't have, and in doing all of this, by the way, the administration, both at the Columbia side and the Barnard side, are undoing models of faculty governance that have existed. There are models of shared governance, whether it's the Senate, whether it's faculty meetings or committees. They're undoing all of this and issuing these top-down sort of really punishments on our students. Even if there is no consequence to a hearing, the fact that you have summoned a student to a hearing is itself distressing. These are
It's
students,
indignation.
these are already students who for many reasons are vulnerable. Many of them have been involved, let's face it, for months of activism and are exhausted emotionally, physically, facing financial instability. They're worried about their scholarships. They're worried about their visa statuses. To say that there's, it's just a conversation, there's nothing is going to come out of it, is not recognizing the harm you're already doing in invoking this model on and sort of imposing this on our students.
There's two things that I take from two major things. There's a lot that you had there that was good, but there's what we're seeing is a cracking in the illusion, the mirage of a democracy. We don't have a democracy, and all of us are the Truman. We're Truman discovering the set of our life. We're hitting that set. We're like, what is this wall here? When he got to the end of the set on Truman, if you ever watched the Truman Show, he gets to the end of the set. He doesn't know he's on the set. So that's literally what it feels like. The narrative control because of the internet has been a problem. Obama has made reference to this, and losing narrative control is what we're seeing. The results of that, or trying to regain narrative control, let me say it that way, is what we're seeing on college campuses. All of the repression acts that they're trying to do is them trying to regain all of the sort of repression and censorship on social media, the apparent banning of TikTok. These are all to control the narrative, because they're like, this is literally this whole thing with this genocide of Palestine. They didn't realize this was this big gap in difference between the young and they didn't know that. So they were generally, and I think honestly, surprised by, they always say, the younger crowd is a little bit anti-war, but then eventually they grow into understanding. They don't feel like on this issue that's going to be happening. You're not going to grow into being a Zionist from here. And then the other thing I wanted to say about, if there's all of this anti-Semitic students, who's raising these anti-Semitic students? Where are these anti-Semitic students coming from? Like, what I'm saying is basically is it like, are these parents? So the parents who are pro-Israel, they're raising anti-Semitic students? Like, how is that happening? I'm only saying that to point out that, of course, these incidents that are being labeled anti-Semitic are not anti-Semitic. You're just against the Zionist project, and it's being lumped together as some sort of there's no outsized anti-Semitic problem on college campuses that's any different than any other marginalized group, is what I'm saying. There's no outsized problem that they're trying to create, that there's some sort of hyper existence of anti-Semitism that goes far and beyond every other thing. This is the reason why we got to have a task force at your campus and not for any other group, because this problem of anti-Semitism goes far and beyond any other issue. And that's because they're labeling anti-genocide, anti-Zionist protests with being anti-Semitic. They're just broad. It seems like every year they add something new to what is called anti-Semitic or anti-Semitism. Those are my final words on it, but I think both of you wanted to chime in one more time. Go ahead, whoever wanted to go.
I'll say this. I will say that anti-Semitism is real, and there's a threat of anti-Semitism, but it's from the neo-Nazis marching in Charlottesville saying Jews will not replace us. There is a real and present danger of that in the US, but we are attributing the wrong causes and the wrong sort of, not the wrong causes as much as misidentifying where that threat is coming from. Right. And I don't think pro-Palestinian protests are necessarily the most, they're not the where the anti-Semitism in the U.S. I think is being encouraged, right? And the second,
Cultivated, yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
and to your point, Jay, of like the generational divide of the Zionist project and the younger generation maybe not being quite as sort of in the same way as a part of it. A colleague of mine literally wrote an op-ed because she was approached by two Jewish students, and this is a Jewish faculty member, who were trying to show the film Israelism on campus. And it's a film that, basically talks about generational differences. And what literally happened was she had to write an op-ed because it was such a difficult process, and our college president nearly canceled it last minute. So again, it goes back to the same, we're not able to have the kinds of nuanced, difficult conversations that we should be having, and instead instituting sort of clampdowns that are not helping anybody.
George Orwell, yeah, everything Shione said. And yeah, George Orwell, Animal Farm. All animals are created equal, but some animals are more equal than others, right? So they'll give lip service to the fact, oh, we don't want bias on campus. We don't want violence or violent speech or hate speech. We don't want it, but we're only going to look at this is what we elevate and emphasize. I mean, those that are called to speak up against the inhumanity that is being perpetrated against the people of Palestine are very clear that they understand their role. We are born on this planet at this point in time, and we have a choice to remain silent or not. And what we do literally affects the lives of others. And that's a heavy thing to throw at a 20-year-old undergraduate who's weighing whether or not their actions are going to impact their career by universities suppressing speech, not taking violence against pro-Palestine protesters seriously, and giving more, elevating the speech of others more. What they're doing is giving space to those that are doing even more extreme things, like the doxing trucks, because it's all part of the same belief system. You stepped out of line. You spoke up against something that we don't want you to speak up against. So we're going to make sure these doxing trucks, you're not going to get a job. You're going to be humiliated. You're going to be traumatized. And the school, they're not doing that. But they're doing all these other things which are part of the same belief system, that some speech is more free than others. And that is unacceptable. And to Shione's point from before, if you don't think that they're going to use this playbook again, that's just foolish. Of course they will. And they'll have space to use it. And it's the same way I feel about what's happening to the folks in Gaza. If we allow this to happen and we don't stop it, or we don't hold accountable those who made this possible, the Biden administration and everybody who cheerleaded this this genocide, if we don't do that, they're going to do it again. They're going to do it again, and they will do it again to another voiceless people who will be dehumanized and demonized. So, we have the choice. We could just kind of whistle past it and decide not to speak out. But for those of us who take our humanity and the humanity of others seriously, that's no longer a choice. And I've referred to this before. I have a colleague who I like and respect, who basically, and I'm paraphrasing, when this all started, the protest movement, sometime in October, November, we had a conversation, and they basically said, I wish it would just stop. There's other things to protest about. There's other things to worry about in the election. And this is not a person I don't respect. It was just this wish it weren't happening. And, it's that old way of looking at it. If talk of genocide makes you uncomfortable, Imagine what it's like to be genocided. So I get that it's not comfortable to hear these things, and we wish it weren't so. We wish this wasn't happening, and yet it is. So I guess a message to all of those who wish it would go away. I think they're starting to realize it's not. And if this all stopped tomorrow, this is still an issue, you know? And I'll throw one other thing is that these students that I'm hearing, they're not keyed into the electoral politics game as being the only way they can express themselves. And they're not beholden to the Democratic Party. I'm hearing this very plainly and clearly. This isn't just about Joe Biden. It's about you are backing a genocide. And that, to me, that's a stain you can't get out. And what I'm so excited about is that the young people who are at the forefront of this movement are going to be the ones that make sure that that stain doesn't come out, that we hold people accountable, and that we remember, you know. And the only way we can do this is in community. And one side note too, that whole thing about poetry, I just want to throw out. There are people, and Shione was really eloquent in describing this, who are not feeling well. I had a student drop out. I was sad and disappointed. I wish they hadn't. I tried to support them, but this can be overwhelming. And I just want to remind folks to connect with people who see you and be in community. And that's, you know, half the thing about going to a protest. It's not just making your voice heard. It's looking around and saying, I'm not crazy. Other people feel it too. So any way we can do that in small groups or big groups, just to, and that one last thing, I'm sorry, it's going through my brain. That's why being able to display a poem or a Palestinian flag or things like that is important, because it lets other people who feel what you're feeling know that they are seen and that there is a community. And they will not kill that. Just saying that now.
Shione, did you have some more? And we're also going to go to you also to just kind of shout out. We've come to the end of this segment. Just shout out, like, where can people find you? Anything you want to announce, any event or anything else you want to sort of give public notice to? The floor is yours.
I have actually, and I think this is a really beautiful example to end with. And this is to sort of Anthony's point. I have a really good example for you, which is that last year in the fall, while all of this was going on, I was teaching a class on student activism to first-year students. And, you know, it's a self-selecting. It's one of the, all first years at Barnard have to take a seminar, but they can pick what topic. And so it's, in some senses, a self-selecting crowd that ends up taking a class on student activism. And we had been studying, you know, a lot of histories of sort of Columbia's activism on campus by students, like when they stopped the Morningside campus, the gym being built in Morningside Park. We had studied the anti-apartheid movement. And on one of these occasions, when the protests had started, there was going to be somewhere in November, outside groups, not just student campus, but within our lifetime and others had announced a protest outside on 116th and Broadway in support of, you know, the student groups that had been suspended. And we got this email from VP of Public Safety, I think, which was basically a laundry list of all the things that students shouldn't do, like be mindful of where you walk, don't talk to strangers, et cetera, et cetera. And it was really around sort of, you know, how to be fearful around protests. And so, of course, I took this, and we got it minutes before class started. So we were all reading it together. And that classroom, remember that this is a class of first semester, first year students. Most of them were not from New York City. A fair number of them were from small towns or rural areas who'd never really encountered big protests before. And this, to the person, students are like, this is teaching us to fear protests rather than think about them or engage with them. And one of them, and this is the sort of anecdote I love and hold dear to my heart, one of them said, this whole line about look over your shoulder and don't talk to strangers, that's often how you meet people of like interest. And this is to Anthony's, I'm not crazy. I'm out here raising my voice, and you find other people who are kindred spirits who are also feeling the same way. And protests are often the way to find your people that you might not immediately have in your immediate circumstance. And so really, like, there's so much learning to be had from all of these sort of moments of activism and large-scale popular sort of social movements and protest movements. And we have to make sure, I mean, they're all led by young people anyway, and they're doing great. And I always say this, the students are like light years ahead of us in terms of organizing and how they're thinking. But we have to really, really, really fight to defend these spaces and opportunities for our students. I think I've shouted this out before, but I run something called Palestine Poetry Collective, and we have a little site, and it's really basic, but as you will see if you scroll down, we just have a collection of resources for people. We have the readings. We've now met over 15 times, and I'm thinking, this is more than a semester's work. We publish all of our readings on here. We have Palestinian poetry, art, films, writing, music. We're really trying to, and this is sort of a community resource. You can find us, email us, and we grow it, based on sort of community input. And the last thing I will say, I was involved in this yesterday, but it's a continuing project. We had an event on campus about the Freedom Theater, which is based out of Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. And it goes back to exactly everything that's already been said today, where my friends in the West Bank are saying they're at the receiving end of a slow genocide that is not being televised in the same ways. And so really, I cannot stress this enough, to think of Gaza, to keep West Bank in our mind, and finding ways of uplifting Palestinian voices, supporting work that Palestinian artists are doing right now. They were talking about, my friends in the Freedom Theater, they work with kids, and they said we had to do winter camp with them. And on the days that the army entered Jenin, they had to cancel those days, but the families would call up and say, can you reschedule camp days? Because that's the only space kids have in Jenin right now. And so we really do everything we can to find Palestinian voices and uplift them and make space for them in whatever ways we can, and support the incredible, incredible sort of awe-defying, death-defying work that they're doing every day.
We have some new people to the stream. Could you just reintroduce yourself, what college you're from, and they want to know, are you a professor? That's a couple of questions we got in the chat there. If you just address that, just for those that just entered the stream.
Sure. I am Shayoni, and I am in the theater department at Barnard College at Columbia University.
There you go, everybody. All right, this is a great website. It's scrolling down there at the bottom. Make sure you check it out. We always talk about an outlet, and it's thank you to Professor Anthony here, is because you need an outlet. You can't, and he tells me this offline all the time, you can't fight all the time. You got to take a break. You need an outlet, and sometimes poetry. We've had guests on the Red Berets who do knitting. It's just different ways you can just to
for
calm
the
yourself.
Medicare
But go ahead.
The
yeah,
Red
for the
Berets
Medicare for all that.
For all.
Yeah, that was for the Medicare for all. But Shayoni, this has been a great experience. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm going to put you in the back in just a second, but I just want to Thank you for joining us. The chat loves you. So many comments here.
You're gonna have to come back,
She sounds like a great communicator. She must be a professor or something like that. Because
It's
they
almost
miss.
like we do this for a living, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think you're part of a podcast. You wanna shout out your podcast also?
That is true. Yes.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting to shout out all of the different things, but really, I'm a theater and performance studies professor, and so we have something called On Tap, so on theater and performance. And you can find us if you search for On Tap podcast, and I'm one of the revolving hosts on it.
Awesome. All right. So, did you want to say anything to Anthony to her before I put her in the back? I think you were gonna say something.
Thank you so much for doing this last minute. You're amazing. I hope to meet you at some point, but it was really great for you to be here and to be that voice. And I learned stuff, and I'm excited about that whole part of self-expression coming into this. It's important to do. So thanks again.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks, Jay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. I'll put you in the back. You can take off whenever you like. And Anthony, I'm gonna read some super chats. You're welcome to stay. I know we're already 2 hours in, but I do got.
I actually do have to go. If I could just.
Okay, so you want to shout out anything? Let people know what you're gonna be doing before
Yes.
I get to the super chats. Go ahead, sir.
If you could bring up a tweet of mine about leaving it blank in the primary. Do you have that open?
I have
a tweet today.
Let me go to that.
Where it says
Hang on
about the
one
New York
second.
primary, and it says leave it blank. I would love to get that out there. I just found out about it like yesterday, but there is a movement. If you are a registered Democrat, because in New York they don't have open primaries. If you are a registered Democrat in New York and you want to voice your disgust with Joe Biden, his administration continuing their complicity and participation in a genocide, then it's down a little more. The primary is this Tuesday, April 4th. Oh, you did. Okay.
This one right here.
New Yorkers can register their disgust with the genocidal Biden administration by going to the primary and leaving it blank and turning it in, because there's no line for uncommitted in New York. But if you leave it blank and turn it in, that registers your belief. Now, it's being sponsored by the Working Families Party, who I'm sure is going to tell people if Biden remains the nominee to vote for him, but that's not the point.
Yeah. That's not the point. They're doing something good now. So let's just judge them here.
Yeah, like we get our allies where we can, and that's important. A couple of other things. Shayoni mentioned it, the importance of connecting the issue of Gaza to what's going on in the West Bank, which is a slow genocide. Israel just announced the biggest settlement plans that they've ever done, which is a massive land grab where they literally steal land and homes from Palestinian residents of the West Bank and give them to people who Israel wants to give them to. So it's the occupation of the West Bank is illegal. It is in violation of multiple international laws. Israel is an illegally occupying army in the West Bank, which is not run by Hamas. So all the other excuses that are used about Gaza, this isn't about Hamas. They want to ethnically cleanse, they being Israel, wants to ethnically cleanse all Palestinians, or as many as they can, from Gaza and the West Bank. And for those that would like some really interesting insight into the West Bank, if you can do a quick search for Ahed, Ahed, Tamimi, Tamimi.
1 second. This thing is
well, Ahed Tamimi is.
Wait, spell it one more time. Hang on, one second. Oh, go to a website or stay on Twitter and look for
Just
it.
go on to do a search, Google or whatever.
Oh, okay. So that's where I need to go. Okay.
Ahed. Tamimi. They just came up, the top one.
Oh, there he goes.
This is the young woman who, when she was 16, was went viral. And if you scroll down, it should show her book, which is what I wanted to mention. She is a resident of the West Bank. Yeah, there's her book. They Called Me a Lioness on the left. So They Called Me a Lioness this is when she was 16, she stood up to an occupying soldier, an occupying Israeli soldier, raised her fist to him. And so people know why, because he had just shot her cousin in the head with a rubber bullet. This happens all the time. Israeli forces are in the West Bank illegally, and they shoot people randomly, occupy their homes. There have been allegations of rape against them as well. As a young girl, she stood up against them, and then she slapped a soldier in the face and was arrested and held for a long time as a teenage girl for that quote-unquote crime. It wasn't a crime because they were there illegally. So that went viral, that video. Now she's 23 or something, but still an activist. And after Israel started their onslaught against the people of Gaza, they went into the West Bank quietly and arrested her for no reason. They didn't like one of her social media posts. That was their stated reason. And they kept her in jail. There are some reports that she may have been arrested again. But that book, They Call Me a Lioness, is a firsthand account of what life in the West Bank is like. So I just want, when we can educate ourselves, there's a lot out there. I think there's an audio version of it too, if you have Audible or whatever. And my last thing is just everybody stay strong, support each other, do what you can when you can, but know when to pull back, and check in with your friends who are also activists, see how they're doing, because some of us are losing friends over this. I just had a friend write me. It was very sad to read, and a message on social media that they were unhappy with my advocacy for the people of Palestine. And my thing is, I know where they stand on the issue, but I would never say that to them. There's somebody I've known for years. I get that people see things differently. I would never bring it up to them because they are who they are. If they wanted to talk about it, we could. But instead, I got labeled. I know I'm not the only one, right? So reach out to your friends. Let them know that you're supporting them, and take good care of yourselves, because we are in this fight for the long haul.
Yeah, all great information. We were able, because we had a lot of people questioning about the name of the person. I'm glad we were able to find the book and get the correct name for those that were looking for it. And I want to say thank you to Professor Anthony. I'll just say it that way. I'll say thank you for joining me today and bringing on that great guest. We got to have her, the two of you on again. So I'll probably have you on before I have her again, but we definitely have to bring her back because they love her. Yeah, they think she's great. I mean, and saying that she's part of the theater organization makes it, her ability to be great on camera makes sense now. So that's great to have her again. Do you know if is she a socialist, or she just happens to be good on a couple of issues that you notice, or you just put
I don't know. I just think overall she's a very compassionate and human who's politically active and active through her art. I don't know what her, beyond that, but it sounds like we are all in sync on a bunch of issues.
Yeah.
One thing really quickly, like last night, because Shayoni mentioned this about making these connections. So I had an hours long conversation with a good friend of mine who I met at Occupy Wall Street in 2011. Right. So now we've been friends over, almost 13 years. And, and we just, to have those connections with these people who I'm still friends with, who I made friends with through my involvement with the protest movement, it's really very And this guy is also a poet. He's published a book on poetry, and he also looks at poetry as a way that he's very open about his recovery from mental illness and using art and poetry. And there's a big connection there. So I think that's something we might want to talk about more, how collectives of artists, musicians, poets, theater people can come together and in this movement here that we're doing for Palestine to really bring the message out to a wider audience, but it's also very healing for us. So on that note, thank you for having me, Jay. I appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to put you in the back. Like I said, thank you for joining. It's always great to have Anthony. I do have maybe 3 segments. I do have more segment on the Obama Biden fundraiser. I'm not done with that. And then I have an article to cover that talks about the demographic in Palestine that is the most targeted is mothers. And based on the numbers, Israel has been killing mothers at a rate of 37 a day. So we're going to be covering that too. But before we do that, I do want to read super chats. So let's get to super chats, and then we'll take a short little bathroom break, and play this video from Jimmy Dore about Alex Jones calling out, what is it? Alex Jones calls out somebody. Alex Jones calls out Rabbi Smully. But let me start with the super chats. Let's start here. I got 5 so far, so we're going to read 5 here just in case we get some new ones. We'll read the 6 and more after this intermission here, but it goes, 26 million for a public servant is disgusting and an indication of professional managerial class values. F that. Big Poor Unite. I love that. That's from Baser Maternal Rage. I'm pretty sure I got that right. Here's another one. This one is from Cryosynth. I think that's 42. 26 million to a war chest for the Democrats, not to any aid for any cause. The problem they are trying to solve for you, the problem they are trying to solve for is you. That is a great super chat. Thank you for this super chat, Christian999. This is who is really running this so-called democracy, big money, and the 3 stooges of the DNC, working class and poor people opposition party. That's what we need. And we're going to get back to that fundraiser that you're referring to in just a second here. This one, super sticker from James Starks. Thank you for that. And then this final super chat. Heads up, Michael Bet David of Red Bar Zionist Radio is watching the stream right now as part of his investigation into the anti-Semitism of the far left. Well, good to see you, sir. Welcome aboard. I said, sir. I'm assuming Michael is a male. But good to see you, person. If it's not, here I'm gonna take a bathroom break. My guests are so great. The discussion, I didn't expect the discussion to go so well as it did. I didn't think it was gonna go bad, but it was a great discussion. So I'm way over the time that I planned, 2.5 hours, but I think I'm gonna be doing about 3 hours because I got another 45 minutes of segments. I got about 3 segments, 15 minutes each to do. So it's about another 45 minutes. But let me take a potty break, as I would say to my 6-year-old, as I would say to my wife, let me take a bathroom break, or anyone else. But while I take a bathroom break, I got a short little video for intermission here. So let's watch this Jimmy Dore video on Alex Jones goes at Rabbi Smully. I think that's how you say his name. I say Rabbi Smelly, but let's let Rabbi Smully. I think that's how you say it.
So you know this guy, Rabbi Shmuley. He's a mental case.
I'll be right back. Bathroom break.
Legit, right? If I didn't know better, I would think he was a plant by Hamas to make Zionists look even worse.
And he sells sex toys with his daughter.
With his daughter. He's a rabbi who sells. So this is what. So now he's hating on Candace Owens, and he's trying to slander her, calling her a racist and an anti-Semite. And he said, for Purim, I've dressed up as a Candace Owens Jew. Or is it just dress up? Or are we Jews deep down always like this? Filth, money, drunk on Christian blood, and dual loyalties for Israel. I felt that since Candace got fired on Friday, I may well as try and bring her some. So here, this is, he's dressed with money, and he's got a fake Daffy Duck nose on. And I'm actually glad to see that Michael Rappaport has found work as head writer, comedy writer for Rabbi Shmuley.
Yeah.
It can't be.
Maybe that's who was on the other end of the phone on that call that he staged.
Yeah. I mean, it can't be for Saturday Night Live because he can't do anything on Saturday nights. So, but to be a rabbi, Keaton, is to be a teacher. And what he teaches us is how it looks when you're missing that thing that you need to make you feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
He's obviously missing that thing. So here he is again. By the way, did you get some work done? Because you look great, Rabbi Shmuley. I can't put my finger on it. Did you do something with your hair? What is it? So Alex Jones saw this attack on Candace Owens, and he tweeted out and said, "You have clearly had a nervous breakdown. You go around starting fights with people and then flip out when they respond. For the sake of your family, seek help." So that's Alex Jones. So then here's Shmuley, or here's Candace Owens. She comes in. She says he and his daughter need to check into rehab. Israel intelligence should intervene, as he's effectively an anti-Israel campaign at this point. No doubt about it. This guy is not. He's making people hate Israel more. He's not a good spokesperson for. He's not a good face for Zionists. Sad. I hope they get the help they need. Alex Jones says this guy is a microcosm of what Israel is doing to itself. Total self-destruction.
And they seem to be hitting it off. She should go work for him. She should work at InfoWars.
There was a time when I would have told Shmuley to stop, but now I realize this is the best thing for the Palestinians and their cause is to keep a guy like Shmuley out there doing it. He's doing all the heavy lifting. No one could hurt your cause more than Shmuley.
Yeah.
I actually think he's a Hamas plant. Here, Shmuley comes back and says, "Hi, Alex. Thought I'd respond to you on the Jewish holiday of Purim. Purim is a day of tremendous victory of the Jews over their diehard enemies. Get this, arch anti-Semite Candace Owens, who was fired from her job on Friday for her disgusting lies promoting that Jews drink Christian blood and that Israel's guilty of genocide, just retweeted arch nutjob and disgusting conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. Jones spent years accusing the family of members of Sandy Hook shooting victims of being actors in a hoax and suggesting that their children were still alive. Alex, the nutter, is telling me that I need help, not him. Who said that Sandy Hook and the murder of all those innocent children was a lie? But fear not, my friends. The same lawsuits that were brought against the unhinged Alex that bankrupted him for his lies will hopefully be brought against Candace Owens for all her lies about the Jewish people and saying that I am a murderer. No doubt the result will be the same. Hashtag never again.
This is the guy who backs Benjamin Netanyahu's insane lie that for every civilian killed, a terrorist has been killed. So by that calculation, whatever the math is, 20,000 some odd Palestinians who have been killed who are clearly not Hamas are in fact Hamas.
Alex Jones comes back and he says, I was not trying to bait you. I am very concerned that you do not realize how much hate you are generating. In my opinion, you are out of your mind, or like the ADL, you want to see Jews persecuted so you can be a leader in the fight against the crisis you are helping create. I don't know which it is. Can you tell me what your goal is? please come on my show, and I will be respectful if you are. You must see that 95% of the comments are not very happy with you. So, I mean, Alex Jones is just crushing him. He can't be a victim if there's no perpetrator, so he orchestrates crimes against himself so he can play victim. That's a classic tactic of the left, like a milder version of what Jesse Smollett did. Alex Jones says, great point. And people told me before Alex came on my show that Alex was pro-Israel. And when he came on, he was not. And I found this is from 20 some years ago. This is what he said about Israel like 20 years ago.
I don't support the Palestinians either. They're all hyped up and psychotic. But Israel's going to get us nuked, always backing them up like this. Israel calls the Palestinians goyim or cattle or dogs or subhuman. They keep them on concentration camps. I got video of them taking Palestinian women's tomatoes they grow and breaking their water containers and stealing. That's why you have this crap. And our children are going to die. We're going to get nuked because of this. Iran's got the nukes now. Syria. We're going to have nuclear war because Israel likes to go around bombing everybody. I'm sorry. It's just the facts. And Israel absolutely is beside itself with joy right now. They are talking about how they're going to blow everything up, how they're going to attack everybody, and guess who's going to get bombed because of it? I have been supportive of Israel for many years. When I found out what they do, shooting little Palestinian children in the genitalia and laughing, it's on video. Little 10-year-olds walk around throwing rocks at tanks. A guy sits off a half mile away and blows their testicles off. They call them goyim. They call them dogs. They call the Arabs cattle. And then the corrupt Arab governments that are in league with this government, it's really a sick Hegelian dialectic, order out of chaos, bringing the world crises, bringing them terrorism, so we'll accept a highly dictatorial police state regime. It's happening.
So even back then, he was telling some truths about Israel, and
okay. I'm back from the bathroom break. Thank you for that little intermission. Again, I didn't plan to go longer, but I'm happy I did because the conversation with Professor Anthony and Shione was great. And let's move on. All right. So we're now going to go back into the normal scheduled programming. So let's go back to Twitter, and we're going to start out with an article that talks about the fundraiser. And as usual, our editor, Erin, was able, after describing what I was looking for her to do, she came up with the perfect graphic, and I want to bring that up as we get back into the topic here. And I'm going to start with this article in just a moment, but let's go to the graphic, which I love. Fundraising for a genocide and warmongers and sex predators. That's what it says on there. That's Bill Clinton, who was kind of the incognito one of the three because he has a lot of baggage, the Epstein stuff. And then, like, recent baggage, I should say. They all have baggage, and he's the one who is the sex predator of, if you're talking about the phrasing on the graphic. And then you have the genocider in the middle. He's fundraising for a genocide. And then you have the warmonger on the far right, the guy who has his drone civilian kill rate is something like 90 in the high 90 percentile. That's who that is, that warmonger, the war criminal. So those are the three who had an event the other day, and we're going to read about the event and then get back to some more video. But let's first start out with this article here. And I love this headline. And this is from World Socialist website. And I feel like the reason I use them maybe 40% of the time is because it's hard to find articles that use language that you would use in your personal analysis, and in the titling and also in the article, it's hard to find that. And on World Socialist website, I find it, 4 out of 10 times, and that's the reason why I use them about 40% of the time. But a lot of my articles, because I don't have to read the entire article because they say it so explicitly. And let's begin here with this. Hang on a second. Let me make sure my sound is good in the chat. Yeah. So let's start here with this headline. And the headline reads, Biden, Obama, and Clinton defend U.S.-Israeli slaughter of Palestinians at record $26 million fundraiser. That's the headline. And it looks like sound is good. All right, so let's read, and I'm not going to bring up the article on their website, but I did take out the snippet that I want to talk about, and let's read. Despite a massive police presence outside and heavy security inside the hall, however, the party tops and their billionaire backers could not conceal the reality of mass opposition to Biden and his partner in crime, war crimes. And I'm going to read that again, but basically, no matter how cable news and everybody's trying to paint this as some sort of almost like a gala, like a social event, and it was all, laughs and smiles, that's not at all. Even with them even calling out, saying that there was protests there, they're not really covering the amount of times there were protests at this event. They're not really covering it in detail. But let me read that again. Despite a massive police presence outside and heavy security inside the hall, however, the party tops and their billionaire backers could not conceal the reality of mass opposition to Biden and his partner in war crimes, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, especially among young people. Hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters rallied in the rain outside of the mid-Manhattan venue, demanding an immediate ceasefire and end to the mass murder of innocent civilians in Gaza, which is being carried out by bombs, bullets, and guns and tanks supplied by the United States. The same day as the New York fundraiser, the International Court of Justice warned of a famine in Gaza and demanded that Israel stop blocking food, water, and other vital aid from entering the besieged enclave. Inside Radio City Music Hall, the Democrats sought to present a festive atmosphere. The event was hosted by comedian Mindy from The Office, I don't know how to say, Colleen, who joked about being in the midst of, quote, so many rich people, end quote, performing for the crowd of 5,000 were celebrity Biden endorsers Queen Latifah, Lizzo, Ben Platt, Cynthia Erivo, and Lee Michelle. I don't know the last 3 or 4 people there. I know up to Lizzo. But let me continue with the article. The main event was a 3-way interview with Biden, Obama, and Clinton, conducted by late night TV host Stephen Colbert. However, the discussion was interrupted multiple times by individual protesters in the audience who stood up and denounced Biden as a war criminal, quote, with blood on your hands, end quote. And we saw that actually, that quote live on a video that we played, and were immediately removed by security. Clinton and Obama categorically defended Biden's policy in Gaza and declared their support for Israel, the Israeli state. When a protester interrupted Obama, the former president snapped back. Quote, "You can't just talk and not listen. That's what the other side does," end quote. And I want to stop here and break this down because I mentioned this before. You can't just stop and not listen. We cannot listen to a Nazi, which is the same thing as a Zionist. Obama is here to confuse people, to pretend like there's two sides to genocide. There is not two sides to genocide. But this is what this, let's call him the eloquent Negro, does best. This is why he's here. The Black Negro getting upset, displaying Black anger in this instance. Never here seeing this Black anger in any other instance, but to prop up the state. This is what makes him a Negro servant. Using your, I'm going to make up a word, Negroism, and any sort of benefit that comes from that, to prop up this system. But anyway, before I get on I was just about to go on a tangent. Let's stay here with the article. Biden responded to the protesters by repeating the official justification for ethnic cleansing and Nazi-style mass murder of Palestinians, that Hamas was to blame for the war and Israel had a right to defend itself. Self-defense. We need to start saying no, they don't. Israel does not have a right to self-defense, and Israel does not have a right to defend itself. That's international law. An occupying force does not have a right of self-defense. Let's continue with the article. With unbounded cynicism, he said there were too many innocent victims, Israeli and Palestinian, equating the hundreds of Israeli killed in the October 7th incursion by Hamas following nearly 2 decades of blockade and military attacks by Israel, with the more than 32,000 Palestinians killed to date by the Israeli Defense Forces. That's why I say I don't give a fuck. October 7th is not the point anymore. Sorry. When you bypass 5,000 dead people, that went out the window. Because you killed the same amount, then you doubled that, then you tripled that. That's it. It's time to tap out. Whatever retaliatory measures you were taking, that was it. Everything above that, and this is just a number I'm pulling out of the sky. It's not a literal number I'm saying to use. It's the number I put. But after a certain threshold, whatever that threshold is, this is above and beyond. But let me finish out the article, and then we can bring up the other one. He then made clear his full support for Israel, saying, quote, "It's understandable Israel has such a profound anger and Hamas is still there. You can't forget that Israel is in a position where its very existence is at stake." This is the part they want to say you need to listen to. This is it. They're not saying they're in no way is this a discussion where a policy is movable. All they're doing is saying the same thing over. They're not, this is not a discussion. This is why you don't need to sit and listen to them. Like Obama says, no, we don't. You're not movable on your policy stance of supporting Israel. So what am I going to hear you say the same shit over in a different way? No. So don't fall for that trap that, oh, you won't listen. No, I don't need to listen to a Nazi who wants genocide. When did that start being the thing? But this is what they want you to listen to. Listen to this quote again. It's understandable Israel has such a profound anger and Hamas is still there. You can't forget that Israel is in a position where its very existence is at stake. They want you to be quiet and listen to that nonsense. Speaking of Israeli Jews, he added, they weren't killed, they were massacred. That's weird that taking your high number when you were lying about the soldiers and adding them to civilian death, when you said it was like 1,500, taking that high number and taking this low number in this article that says 32,000. Are we serious? Like you're talking about 20 some odd times the amount of people? It's just not serious that you're still talking about October 7th. It's not serious, in my opinion. You're still talking about hostages. Bro, we are at 32,000. Shut up. You're at 32,000. And that's a low number, according to that article. It's more like 100,000 that they're at. So, of course, the nonsense of this fundraiser was met with this protest, and it's keeping the Democrats very afraid because they literally don't know what to do to like sort of satisfy without, because they're not changing policy. This is the one I want to go to before I actually go to that article. I want to this one right here. So let's get back into the actual event. And we're going to go to Democracy Now! To get a little bit more foundational background for this discussion.
Now.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Pro-Palestine protesters disrupted the largest one-night fundraiser in presidential campaign history here in New York yesterday. The star-studded event at Radio City Music Hall in Manhattan featured President Biden alongside former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, raised a $25 million for Biden's reelection campaign. More than 5,000 people paid to attend, with tickets costing up to $500,000 each. For $100,000, guests could get a picture with the 3 U.S. presidents taken by the renowned photographer Annie Leibovitz. Celebrities in attendance included Queen Latifah, Mindy Kaling, and Lizzo. The main event was an onstage conversation with the 3 U.S. presidents, moderated by late-night talk show host Stephen Colbert. But just 10 minutes into their conversation, Biden was talking. Protesters began disrupting the event, calling on the president to stop arming Israel and to call for a ceasefire in Gaza.
We had no president on January the 6th. There was an insurrection.
Shame on you, Joe Biden! Shame on you! Shame on you! You are genocide in Palestine, and no amount of full concern that you do will change the billions that you are doing! There's blood on your hands! One right here. Blood on your hands!
Permanent victory in Palestine.
People watching the home, excuse me, Mr. President. For people who are watching home on TV, you may not be able to hear the protesters who, hold on a second here.
We talk about the innocent How dare you talk about the innocent of the Palestinians? Palestinians are dying right now because of your actions. Palestinians are dying right now because of your actions. Because of what you're doing. Because of the things that you're doing. Blood is on your
Shame, shame. Stop brutalizing him. Stop brutalizing him.
The protesters were all physically escorted outside. The event disruption was organized by a coalition including Adla Justice Project, Palestinian Youth Movement, and Jewish Voice for Peace, and the Sunrise Movement. Meanwhile, outside the event, thousands took to the streets to protest President Biden's support for Israel's assault on Gaza. Protesters gathered at Bryant Park and marched up to Radio City Music Hall. Democracy Now! Was there and spoke to some of the protesters about why they were there.
Currently, we are working on the Leave It Blank New York campaign for the upcoming primary happening April 2nd on Tuesday. We are asking people to leave it blank because there is no uncommitted option in New York City. So we rather tell them to scan their ballot as is, and that will then count as uncommitted to show Genocide Joe that we are not going to stand while we watch our brothers and sisters being genocided.
My name is Jenna. I am a first-generation American Palestinian, and we have had enough. My family's voted Democrat for as long as we've lived in the U.S. It's heartbreaking. We feel guilty, and we feel awful. I feel like I voted for my own people's genocide, and I'm done letting Democrats get away with it just because we're scared of the alternative.
My name is Karina Garcia. I'm running for Vice President of the United States with my comrade Claudia de la Cruz, and we're running with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And we're here today as we've been through all of these protests for Palestine because we understand that our government is orchestrating this genocide, that without their support, without their financing, Israel could not be doing what they're doing to the Palestinian people. And it's important for us to come together and not allow these war criminals like Biden or Clinton or Obama to just use these moments to be in New York City to raise money. The people are waking up and they're seeing that the Democratic Party is where hope goes to die. And that the people have to build a new government for the working class, for the people of this country, that we cannot allow them to drag us into the 1800s, drag us into a nuclear war.
You know, the fact that we had access to watching a genocide in real time, and we were able to see for ourselves that these people are liars, that everything that they have told us about Palestine and about the Middle East has been a lie, means that we are able to make, and also we're able to make the connections. Young people are able to make the connections between what's happening in Palestine, what's happening to migrants in the U.S., what's happening to queer and trans people in the U.S., and we are saying free Palestine, people over profit, and an end to U.S. imperialism everywhere.
Anybody who sees this, no matter where you come from, no matter who you are, you have to take part in this. You cannot be silent. Everyone must become involved. There are lives being lost. There are pregnant women being run over by tanks. This is abominable. We cannot learn about the Holocaust and watch movies about the Holocaust and then say, oh, well, you know, I would have done something then. You have to do it now. It's like Aaron Bushnell said, what would you be doing during those times? You're doing it now. So if you don't like what you're doing, if it's not enough, change it.
Voices from outside.
That was great. And the reason I wanted to play that because it wasn't any real reporters, are just on the ground. What people, you know, at the event, when I say the event, the protest part of this, of what we're talking about as far as the event, was saying on the outside. We saw what they were saying on the inside on the stage, and then we saw what they're saying on the outside. I'm going to play that one too. Here's more on the inside. This is Sabby just pointing to this, pandering to black votes, and that's because that's who they had, Lizzo. Now, I must say, I don't know Lizzo's music. I've been lucky enough to be able to dodge it, so I don't know it. So, but let's play. It's only 19 seconds, but this is Lizzo at the event. To go back inside, we went outside. Let's go back inside the event for more footage.
Radio City Music Hall! We got 3 presidents in the building tonight.
3 war criminals in the building.
So everybody, clap your
Let's clap your hands for genocide. Clap your hands for dead babies. Clap your hands for 37 mothers killed on average. I'll get to that story in just a second. And shoot, where did I put that video? It's a perfect time to put where's his video? How about I just go to his page? It's a perfect time to put his video, Eddie. Eddie. Man, he did a video. My bad. Anyway, I'll find it in the background and I'll come back to it. I'll find it in the background. I stashed it somewhere apparently that I don't know. I don't know where it's at. So let's go back to the presentation. All right. So I stashed it somewhere. I don't remember where it's at. So we went inside. Now let's go to this video here. This is Nina Turner. And Nina Turner is brought on. I think this is a conservative network. Is that Newsnext? But she's brought on. This is a 1-minute clip to talk about what's happening at the fundraiser. So let's listen.
The Biden campaign says they raised $25 million at this fundraiser, breaking records. Does this show the party is rallying around President Biden despite the protests outside of Radio City?
Oh, it's an illusion. I mean, the people in that room are rallying around this president, and there's nothing surprising about that. That's par for politics. But in the streets, there's a whole different story. And I think that's what my party is missing. They are really out of touch. And to show a callous indifference to what is happening in Gaza to Palestinians is really going to hurt this president. There's a recent poll that shows that 75% of Democrats, the voters, the coalition that got President Biden to the White House in 2020, disapprove of the military actions in Israel, and about 60% of independents. So while in the suites, things seem sweet, in the streets, that is not the case. People are reeling from economic pains, and it just really shows that this party is out of touch.
So that's Nina Turner. And we have critiques for Nina Turner from time to time, and I must, admit that I'm probably the softer one on Nina than everybody here at the network. But we have critiques, but when she does make points, I do want to shout that out. So this is a great point that she makes, but she still refers to it as her party, which is the problem. So I found the video. I did save it. I saved it on the main account, and I always do that. I get the main account mixed up with my own account. So I saved it in the bookmarks on the main account. So let me go to that, and it speaks to Lizzo. You remember the video of Lizzo singing, pumping up the 3 presidents? He includes that, a critique of that in here. So let's listen to this from Midwestern Marx Institute.
So there was recently a fundraising event at Radio City Music Hall in New York that featured not 1, not 2, but 3 war criminal presidents. And the event started with a concert by the establishment's favorite musician, Lizzo. I guess these presidents heard the story about her mistreating her workers, and they were like, let's go. That's our girl. She'll definitely be down to do a genocide fundraiser.
We got 3 presidents in the building tonight. That sounds like a party to me.
That sounds like a party to me. 1 million people in Gaza are on the brink of famine. Sounds like a party to me. Biden using our taxes to send Israel more warplanes so they can take the lives of another 10,000 children. That's a party to me. Raising money for the guy who destroyed Libya, the guy who destroyed Gaza, and the guy who carpet bombed Serbia. That's a party to me. I mean, it's really wild to juxtapose what our politicians and rich people are doing here in America as they are actively facilitating the starvation of little babies in Gaza. All facilitated by this man, Joe Biden, who just sent Israel another $14.5 billion. And he has the gall to come before us and do a fundraiser asking for more money. Sounds like a party to me. Shut up. I'm so sick of you people.
Now, his ability or his the accomplishment of being able to raise 25 or 26 million dollars in a single day literally is on the backs of Hollywood. That's literally it. That's literally how he was able to come here. And of course, you know, Wall Street and other all the regulars, but the ones that wanted to get the picture were all the Hollywood people. Get their pictures with the three warmongers. That's what happened. But anyway, thanks for the clip from Midwestern Marks. I thought it was a pretty cool clip. I wanted to make sure I played. Let's get back to the presentation. I think I was here, yeah, with the Nina Turner chiming in here. Let's get to the next part of this. And now we get to this second clip from Democracy Now! This is another great clip from one of the activists. She gives a great, wouldn't call it speech, but she gives a great interview here and says a lot of great things here.
Muslim New Yorker, which is supposedly a progressive and democratic city, but we're out here because this genocide and the 75-year-old Nakba is bipartisan, and these Democrats are not going to save us. And this is not something that started on October 7th. Joe Biden's complicity did not start on October 7th. Obama has bombed our people and starved and displaced our people. Clinton has bombed, starved, and displaced our people. So we're here to take a stand against this entire damn system. What Biden needs to realize and remember is that American exceptionalism does not fly in the Muslim community. Over our brothers and sisters that are dying right now. What's happening in Gaza right now is worse than any travel ban. And you can't scare us with the prospect of a Trump presidency. We've lived through one.
We're here today.
You can't scare us with a Trump presidency. We lived through one. Love that. Like it's literally the same policy. And Trump is going to have a potty mouth and say a bunch of racist shit in public. But you do the same racist policy behind doors. Joe Biden, Democratic Party, Obama, Bill Clinton. That's what's crazy. But let me let the clip continue before I talk too much here.
Because there are three of the most notorious criminals, three of the most violent masters of head of the U.S. war machine, including Joe Biden, but also Obama and Bill Clinton, who had the audacity to come to New York City and fundraise while Biden is actively supporting a genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. And we know also very well that this is just one extension of the U.S.'s long complicity in the settler colonial state. The U.S. does whatever it can militarily, financially, politically to ensure that it maintains a hegemony in the world. And the Middle East is particularly important to the U.S. because of its resources. The U.S. supported the creation of Israel because it wanted white people, mostly Europeans, in the Middle East, to destabilize the Middle East, to ensure that there was never pan-Arab unity. I just got back from international travel, including in Palestine from September to December. I was in the West Bank, between the West Bank and Jerusalem. So many of my friends since I left in December have been kidnapped in their homes by the Israeli military and indefinitely detained. No charges, no trial.
Currently, we are working on the Leave It Blank New York campaign for the upcoming primary happening April 2nd on Tuesday.
Okay, so they kind of go into a little bit of a different part here that we're not going to present in this segment. So now let's go to another article now, which is the protest. And then we got a couple of more things and we should be out of here soon. But here's the headline here. Pro-Palestinian protests disrupt Biden's $1 million fundraiser. I believe this one is from the Left Voice. If you know what the left, it's just leftvoice.org or leftvoice.com. You can find this article title. And I've already read it and I took out the snippet I want for this segment and I'll read it along here on the side if you would like to read along. those who mobilize to protest the event can see through the recent shifts in the Biden administration rhetoric around the genocide, meaning the people on the streets, they know your rhetoric is bullshit. They know your building a port on the shore of Gaza is bullshit. They know your UN resolution that was voted down by China and Russia was bullshit. They know you're abstaining on this latest resolution that finally passed is bullshit. They know the PR stunt to pretend that you and Netanyahu are fighting is bullshit. You're not fooling anybody with these narratives. At least not the people who are out in the streets. Okay. Recently, Biden and the Democrats have changed their tack and began to bring more criticism on the military assault in Gaza and the Israeli government. The widespread opposition to the genocide, increased calls for ceasefire at home, and Biden's low poll numbers ahead of the election have forced Biden and other Democrats to take up some rhetorical support of a limited ceasefire, a proposal that does not even include an immediate and permanent withdrawal of all Israeli troops and an end to the siege of Gaza. Then on Tuesday, the U.S. abstained from the recent ceasefire resolution vote made at the UN Special Council. But those shifts, and we're talking about these rhetorical shifts, are cynical attempts to give rhetorical concessions to the movement for Palestine in order to bolster Biden's re-election chances. Basically confuse and lie to workers, to pretend as if you're doing something while you're shipping them secret weapon sales, while you're saying in the same breath that Israel has a right to defend itself and I'm never going to go away from Israel and supplying weapons. But those shifts are cynical attempts to give rhetorical concessions to the movement for Palestine in order to bolster Biden's re-election chances. The protesters who mobilized in New York City weren't fooled by those shifts and we shouldn't be either. Along with Biden, former President Obama and Clinton are both longstanding supporters of Israel who have sent billions of dollars to sustain the colonial state. Each hold their own blood-soaked legacies of imperialist military intervention abroad. Obama expanded the use of drones in the U.S. military, carrying out over 500 drone strikes in Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen during his 2 terms, while supporting the Saudi monarch in its relentless bombing of Yemen. That's Obama, the guy who was telling you, you guys need to listen to. Why? You see your record, bro? What do we need to listen to a war criminal for? Explain more war criminal shit. We don't. Don't buy into the fake civility so they can prop up the same status quo and convince you and confuse you. I continue here. Clinton, on top of singing the 1993 or signing the 1993 Oslo Accord that dashed prospects for Palestinian self-determination, led bloody military interventions in Somalia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Haiti, and Kosovo. After 5 months of protests, the forces of the Democratic Party and their allies are mobilizing to try to co-opt and quell the movement, much like they did in 2020 with Black Lives Matter. This is their attempt. This is why Obama's here. This is why Obama is saying you need to listen. 2, listen to me, put you to sleep with my trans. Listen to me put you into a trance. I mean, that's basically what Obama wants to do. While it is urgent that we double down our efforts to massively massify the movement in the streets, schools, and universities, we also need to expand our resistance to the genocide with working class methods of struggle that include disruptive work actions and larger demonstrations and strikes to force the regimes to end all military and economic aid to Israel. In imperialist countries like the US, which are playing a key role in sustaining Israel to maintain their strategic interest in the Middle East, these efforts, along with the Palestinian people and Jewish workers who reject Zionism, are crucial. We defend the right to self-determination of Palestinian people and fight for a workers' and socialist Palestine. This is from leftvoice.org. Leftvoice.org, if you want to go research this headline here. Now, we're going to go to a couple of more videos here, but let me show you this. This is the money that Joe Biden, and this is the AIPAC tracker, has been tracking the money that all of these representatives have been taking from Israel. And this is what for Joe Biden. Joe Biden, President of the United States, almost $6 million received from pro-Israel interest. Despite a widening rift with the Israeli government, the Biden administration continues to authorize the transfer of 2,000-pound bombs and other weapons. This is according to the Washington Post. And for those listening, the exact number is $5,736,701. That's Biden. All right, so let's go back now to YouTube TV, because I want to now continue with the unhinged conservative on Fox News before I close with the clip from MSNBC and Joyanne Reid. Let's go back to this conservative reaction here, and let's play it.
From Gaza. That would have gotten huge applause. That would have done more for him politically than pandering to these pro-Hamas terrorist sympathizers that on the radical left.
A new Fox News poll finds that in the conflict between Israel and Hamas, Mark, voters backed the Israelis by a 31-point margin. But the recent drop in support, and it's been a significant.
Yeah, and it's been a significant drop that she's referring to here, because you might look at this poll and be like, wow, 59%, that's a lot. That's about almost 30 points down from what it was pre-October 7th. So it's a significant drop in support. And understand, it's this high because of the propaganda. It's this high because of the and I'll just leave it there, because of the propaganda, because I was going to say a different category, but it falls under propaganda too. So no need to separate. Let's just keep it under propaganda.
Significant drop in support is driven by liberals, Democrat
Let me back it up 15 seconds, because that last part
voters
is
backed
important.
the Israelis by a 31-point margin. But the recent drop in support, and it's been a significant drop in support, is driven by liberals, Democrat voters under the age of 35, and women. The number of Republicans, conservatives, and white evangelicals backing Israel has mostly held steady. This is just troubling from a humanitarian standpoint, that people are not standing against terrorism in a way.
Yeah, I think that there have been other polls showing more support for Israel, but there was a Harris poll that came out, Harvard Harris poll, Mark Penn, who's on our air a lot, that 77% think Hamas should be removed from Gaza. 67% hold Hamas responsible for creating the conflict. 63% support a ceasefire only after Hamas is removed and all the hostages are returned. And 66% believe that Israel is trying to avoid civilian casualties. The vast majority of Americans stand with Israel. The vast majority of Americans, they're sympathetic to the Palestinian civilians, but they are not sympathetic to Hamas. And Joe Biden is making a huge strategic blunder by pandering to this small minority of people who support Hamas, who are protesting. You know, Arab American voters make up about 5% of the electorate in Michigan, which is what he's concerned about. He should be more concerned about the rest of the electorate who sees him as weak. The voters who only 34% of Americans support his policy on Israel. That's the only issue that he has lower approval on is immigration. And that's saying something.
Right.
So
it's weird that he points out that he shouldn't listen to this fringe group, and then he points out the fact that his approval rating is low, as if it's low because he's not going harder at support. It's low because of the current stance. And I'm not sure what poll this guy is referring to, but let's bring up a couple of headline receipts here to disprove what he's saying about people not supporting a ceasefire and the support that Israel is getting. And I'll just scroll through I'll scroll through all of these here. Here's a common dream. Given these numbers, I don't know how President Biden can reconcile his stalwart support for Israel with the clear preference that his core constituency have for an end to this war. And the headline is support for Israel's war on Gaza plummeting among key Biden voters. Let's continue. The headlines continue. Here goes another poll. Pew poll. Americans more supportive of human aid to Gaza than military aid to Israel. So what is he talking about supporting? Here's the breakdown. Americans more supportive of humanitarian aid to Gaza than to Israel. Humanitarian aid to help Palestinians strongly favor is at 28%. Aid to Israel is at 17% as far as strongly. But then you add all of these up. You can add all of these up. Then you say somewhat, what is this? Somewhat favor, 22% and 28%. So we're at what, 50%? 19% and 17%. What is that? 36%. So you see the difference. So I'm not sure where he's getting his polls. There's another poll here. Majority of Americans disapprove of Israel's military actions in Gaza. A new poll from Gallup has found that the majority of Americans disapprove of Israel's military action in Gaza, which has killed over 32,000 Palestinians, including 13,000 children. And it goes on, but let me just show you the graphic here. Does it get bigger if I do that? Americans have shifted to disapproval of Israeli military action in Gaza. Do you approve of or disapprove of military action Israel has taken in Gaza? Disapprove is at 55%. Disapproval in November, right after it happened of last year, was at 45%. So it's gone up 10%. Approval has taken a decline of 14 points. It was 50% approval. So it's barely half in November. It's gone down to 36%. So not sure, again, what poll the guy on the screen is talking about, because that was a new video. It wasn't like an old video where he can refer to old polls, let's say back in November. Here's another headline from Middle East Eye. A recent Pew poll found that more young Americans have favorable views of Palestinians than of Israelis in the current war on Gaza, reaching 60 and 46% respectively. What is he talking about? Middle East Eye. 60% of Americans between the ages of 18 to 29 express favorable views of Palestinian people. So it's the same poll, but expressed differently and more clearly expressed, so you know which number goes to which. While 46% have favorable views of Israeli people. What is he talking about in the clip? Here's another one. According to the latest Gallup poll, 36% of Americans approve of Israel's actions in Gaza. Why is Biden so eager to support something that the majority of Americans are against? And it just goes on. And then you say, what about corporate news reports on it too? Here is ABC News reporting on a narrow majority of Americans, 55%, disapprove of military action Israel has taken in Gaza. Here's the Washington Post. Most Americans disapprove of Israel's war in Gaza. So again, the guy states something on TV that's clearly inaccurate. Nobody fact checks him, of course. And then they move on with the conversation with the false information. Now, I'm going to let this play just a little more because he does make a couple of more just ridiculous claims. Let's listen.
You know, I think he needs to be more concerned with the mainstream of this country that understands that Israel was attacked and that has a right to defend itself than by pandering to these people who are not going to vote for him anyway because they're radical terrorist sympathizers.
I want to move on to
Radical
this in terms of alienating almost 90%.
So that was the last part
of
of that one. Now we're going to go to Inside Politics and get a short segment of something they said in Inside Politics. I got to go home. I'm not that well versed on maneuvering through YouTube TV, but I will try. All right, so let's go to Inside Politics. It should be here. And then, where are we here?
You're saying it's such a good point, and it's a nice segue to the.
Beautiful how she segues away from the great point that the lady was making. But let's go to 8:18. That's where I need to go for this video. So 1 second here. Right about there. Let's start here. And let's see if I have any notes written down for this part. Where is it? Inside Politics with Dana Bash. See what Obama and Clinton say to protesters. So Obama and Clinton say other things to protesters. So this is more of what Obama and Clinton said, not just the sharp retort that Obama had, but it's some other more palatable things they say in trying to confuse workers and people.
It's a gamble, which is why you're seeing the big investments like you're doing in Michigan this morning.
And, you know, it was really interesting to see not just President Biden give a response to those protesters, but his two Democratic predecessors. Barack Obama, who is seen by progressives as maybe more on their side on Israel, and Bill Clinton, who tried like almost to the last day of his presidency to actually find that two-state solution. I just want to read what each of the men said. Obama, when you look at a situation like we're seeing in Gaza and in Israel, and your heart breaks initially for a massacre of unbelievable cruelty, it is also possible for us to say we unequivocally support the people of Israel. Clinton, the world we live in is hard because you have to keep two apparently conflicting ideas in your head. You should trust them to work for it, to work to ease the suffering of the totally innocent Palestinian citizens and not to allow Israel's security to be lost. So to me, the way I saw that was as much about the substance of what they said and also a reminder of the fact that these are two amazing communicators. Amazing communication.
Without a doubt. And another president can often explain for you better than you can yourself. We saw that with Bill Clinton, of course, in the Obama reelection. And I think we'll see it again in this reelection as well. But on those issues specifically, and when the event was interrupted by protesters, Barack Obama said something he has said repeatedly on a variety of issues. You can't just talk, you have to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And he always became very frustrated, like when students in his class weren't listening. He sort of strikes that professorial tone. But I think the Bill Clinton words there are so important, perhaps to older voters who really recall him very fondly here. So I think those are also sort of leading the way to another conversation. What would Trump do? I mean, what would happen with Gaza?
This is the threat. Here's the threat. It's that, yes, we're supplying weapons, but Trump is going to supply weapons and ban Muslims. So vote for me, or you're going to get the extra banning Muslim part on top of the genocide. You'll never get out of the lesser of two evils if you can be convinced of that. And we're at the climax of the lesser of two evil argument, because we're talking about the lesser of two evil between genociders, and that's literally what he's presenting to you. What will Trump do? Is he going to be less of a genocider? No, he's going to go harder at genocide. So our choices are lesser of two genociders. That is what they're saying, quite literally, when they're talking, because he's saying, how is he going to be different on the policy? He's not. That's the point they're making.
Gaza, if Trump was president. So I think that's a discussion that has been sort of left out of the broader conversation and the protests. Okay, this is the season for protesting.
Sure.
The fall is the season for voting. So we'll see what these protesters do.
I have to, speaking of Bill Clinton, this quote was also interesting. Here's what he said about 2016. He said, "We should not make 2016's mistakes. We should stay with what works and not let people who try to undo it take credit for whatever." Now, what happened? Who ran in 2016?
2016. No, I would have said that if his wife was sitting on stage with him, former Secretary of State.
And by the way, I think he would say he, as one of her top surrogates, made some big mistakes.
Right, and I think that it also it shows how much 2016 continues to haunt this race. Not only because Bill Clinton is sitting there.
That's why they're coming after third-party people.
Of 2016, that Democrats are worried that they have a blind spot, that they're not, that there's somewhere they're not going, that maybe there's some people they're failing to talk to, and that fear, I think, is going to continue, particularly as you see these poll numbers. If Biden
listen to her,
don't move one way or the other.
That's so interesting. It's such a good point, and it's a nice segue to the last point.
Yeah, you see it. She bring up the poll numbers. It's a nice segue to get the fuck away from that conversation, and she pivots to something else there. But you see almost like the airhead type analysis you get on cable news that is always lacking major parts or major significant analysis that would benefit the worker, the average person. It always lacks that. But let's go to, now we're going to go to Joy-Ann Reid show. It's called The Readout. We're going to go to The Readout. I think I have to search that one. Because listen to how low we've gotten with vote shaming. Every time we get around this season, this is the season for vote shaming. We always have it. We always, and it's always different levels of it. And she participates in it. She participated in it last time with Bernie Sanders. She had several comments about Bernie. She had several comments about Bernie Sanders. This is a brand new low, in my opinion. This is a new low. 1256 is the marker. So this is a new low that she goes to in this short, I think it's a 3-minute clip. 1256 that I cut it down to. When I'm able to prepare for the show, it's a lot more concise. If I only had a producer that was available when I am. But let's listen to Michael Steele and I forget the other black gentleman and Joy-Ann Reid take vote shaming to a new low, in my opinion. So let's bring up the right banner here. So here we go. Here's Joy-Ann Reid in this short clip. I think it's maybe 3 minutes or less.
It was really 45 people did. You're right, non-consecutive. It's Grover. Yeah, Grover and Grover. You're right. It really should be 45. But the other thing about it is that I think about these three presidents inside of that building across the street, Michael, is that there's a protest outside. And in all three of their presidents, there were protests outside at some point. I remember, I'm old enough to remember during President Obama's tenure, right-wingers used to gather with firearms outside of places where he was to try to menace him with guns. And he didn't sick the army on them or try to have them shot. Donald Trump is a president who has said that he would sick the military on people who were doing that. He would snatch those people off the street because they were protesting for Gaza, and he would deport them out of the country, or he would have them shot. That's a difference, you know? That's a difference that you can't even compare him to even George W. Bush, who I had deep disagreements with. He's the one former president of the 45, which I love. I love look, you have to have a historian on the set and lovingly correct you.
I know, right?
But this one guy would have those people deported or shot.
It is profoundly important what you just said, for the reason that what pulls all of that together is the man who says he wants to be a dictator. And a dictator does that. And what I hope people have come to appreciate after Donald Trump has said that and reiterated it over and over again, that come January next year, the day after his inauguration, if he, God forbid, should be inaugurated the next president, and there are protests because of that, what do you think Donald Trump is going to do? Do you think you'll be able to freely assemble as these protesters are outside of Radio City Music Hall, speaking their minds and gathering as they're allowed to do under the 8th?
So you'll be able to protest. You'll at least be allowed to protest a policy that we're not going to change if you elect Joe Biden. That's the new selling point. You'll be allowed to protest far away from the event so you can get all your anger out for a policy we're not going to change. And I'm going to tell you up front, we're not going to change. That's the Biden administration's reaction or 2 cents in this.
Amendment, exercising free speech as they're able to do under the First Amendment. What do you think Donald Trump's response would be? We saw what he did with Lafayette Park.
Yes.
Just because he wanted to make the point.
We also
that he
saw
was
what he
in
did
charge.
when he
And
was
he
sworn
wanted
in,
he
and it was
ordered
protest.
Police to push
We also saw that part.
peaceful protesters out of the way, to bully them and to run over them.
This is the
And
selling
so
point
when
now.
he's back in that office, you need to understand what a man says he wants to be a dictator, what that means for your freedoms. So yeah, you can disagree with Joe Biden on Gaza. You can be pissed because he didn't get the this or that policy through. But you'll be able to gather in Lafayette Square at Radio City Music Hall in 2025, 26, 27 and protest that.
And complain about it. You can be pissed. You can do that. But you better come out and vote for him so you can protest about it, even though we're not going to change it. What type of clown shit is this? They're serious. This is serious. I think, is that the end of the part that I wanted to play? I think there might be a couple more seconds. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to play a couple more seconds of it. So let me let it play another 45 seconds. Apparently they say more. I'm going to rewind it a little bit and then let him play it. Let's listen to it all the way through.
And so when he's back in that office, you need to understand what a man says he wants to be a dictator, what that means for your freedoms. So yeah, you can disagree with Joe Biden on Gaza. You can be pissed because he didn't get the this or that policy through. But you'll be able to gather in Lafayette Square at Radio City Music Hall in 2025, 26, 27 and protest that. That is not a guarantee from the man who says he wants to be a dictator. And you need to really process that and get over you know, whatever's ailing you right
Get
now.
over
because
the
I'm telling you,
genocide
I'd rather
dead
be at a
babies.
protest under Joe Biden than to be worried about.
Get over seeing dead babies. Get over 37 mothers killed per day on average. Get over it. And vote for Joe Biden so the genocide can continue, but at least you can come out and protest and we're not going to pay any attention to you. That's Joy-Ann Reid's attempt at vote shaming. You like it? That's fantastic.
About someone knocking on my door and pulling me out of my house or arresting me because I am protesting a policy under Donald Trump.
Or being shot, which is what Donald Trump loves to say. It's one of his favorite phrases. He said he would like people who are doing protests like the one outside of this building to be shot.
Concentration camps in Texas. Yeah,
that's what he said. And when somebody tells you who
why is the concentration camp stuff egregious to you, but the genocide stuff is not? I don't understand your level of morality and right and wrong. I don't get where you place things, because you want us to be highly upset about him saying a Muslim ban, but when we say a Muslim genocide or a Palestinian genocide, then that's worth less. But this is what Negro servants do. They lend melanin to prop up the white supremacy talking point, white supremacy power structure, white supremacy foreign policy. This is shameful. This is shameful, what she's doing and what she's saying here. 1, 2, 3. I think I may have covered all of what I wanted to cover. Now, there was something I didn't get a chance to go back to. Let me see if it's still queued up. If it is, I'll play it. If it's still queued up here. Yeah, the Donnie Deutsch rant about anti-Semitism and people who are against Israel. I literally don't know why he has the platform to come on anytime he wants to talk. He has nothing that would say people should listen to him. And I'm talking about lived experience. You listen to RBN because of our lived experience as workers. He doesn't have that. He inherited his money.
You know, it's so beyond college campuses. Jonathan's group put out a survey that 1 in 4 Americans say they know someone that dislikes or hates Jews, and 1 in 4 Americans know somebody who is pro-Hamas. Pro-Hamas. That means you are pro-annihilating Israel. You are pro-killing Jews. And as Jonathan also pointed out, we're getting squeezed on two.
This is where Zionists always love to conflate. Death to the state of Israel has nothing to do with people. If the United States dissolved tomorrow, would all the people die away? It is so absurd. But this is what they do. And you see the guy on the right side, Jonathan Greenblatt, he's the worst of all of them. But Donnie Deutsch, these are the tag team that's brought on here to push ridiculous anti-Semitic claims, taken away from real anti-Semitic claims.
Levels, we're getting squeezed from the right, we're getting squeezed from the left. And there's also another kind of anti-Semitism where you get squeezed, where on the one hand, people are anti-Semitic against Jews and the tropes of vermin and they're not humans. But on the other hand, oh, they have too much. The Jews have too much. So they're getting squeezed from the left and the right and the top and the bottom. And those numbers are staggering.
Zionists are just victims. We have to stop using Jews when they refer to Jews. They're talking about Zionists. When people say Jews run the Hollywood, no, they don't. Zionists run the Hollywood. It is a clear, distinct difference. Zionists run Hollywood. Zionists run the U.S. empire. Zionists. That's what we say. But let's continue.
And it just sends chills through me.
Yeah, I mean, look, Donnie, I think
this a
Joe
ghost?
put his finger
Yeah, it
on
looks like
something
a ghost.
incredibly important. So Caddy asked before, well, the threat of far-right extremists. Here's the thing. When a student who's honored at the University of Michigan is praising and pleading for the death of Jews, why isn't she considered an extremist?
Death of Zionists is what she said. Let's equate what Zionists are, Nazis. Now, if you said death to Nazis, would anybody have a problem? No, there's even a phrase where people say punch a Nazi. Zionism is akin to Nazism. Same rationale. But we don't need to cover Jonathan Greenblatt, and I think one of my other members covered that part, and I don't want to double dip on it. A couple of more items I may have for the genocide segment. That last video right there, I think I showed you all the rest of my receipts for this part. So we're gonna close out. Yeah, and I read all of the articles I had. All right, so this part here, let's listen. Listen, this is more shut up and get in line about this Israel thing. Let's listen.
And Boswell, meanwhile, Mike mentioned the protests that were carried out inside Radio City. There were some also outside Radio City. What do you make of how Democrats are handling the protests and the issue of the United States policy towards Israel and its policy of how Israel is handling the war in Gaza?
Two things. I think what Barack Obama said in response to the protests is like, look, we have a big tent party. You don't want a party that has a singular voice, a singular narrative, because that's what you're getting on the other side. And that suggests their values, but it really talked a lot about democratic values, that we're willing to have these conversations and these tough conversations, quite frankly. And yes, I do believe that these protests have signaled a larger movement, among a lot of voters, particularly a lot of young voters. But we see also that these protests and these conversations, particularly a lot of those votes that we've seen for this uncommitted candidate in Michigan, Wisconsin, has actually impacted the administration's language and view.
Their language.
Position with respect
what
to
does that do?
To the war between Israel and Hamas. So, it's reminiscent to some extent of, when I was a young voter and I was protesting apartheid in South Africa,
And now look at you now. You were a young voter protesting apartheid in South Africa. Now you're an old Democratic hat promoting and supporting genocide in Palestine. How far have we come?
These, protests work. That voice does work, and it does move the needle. And owing to what former President Barack Obama said, that's the Democratic Party of today, that's willing to entertain these different and.
You see the threshold they're setting now? Vote for us, because at least we're willing to entertain. We're willing to entertain your grievance that we're going to deny and continue with our status quo policy. That's the selling point. Don't fall for
it. Diverse voices.
That's the selling point. And it's pretty terrible. I believe that was my last one in this particular segment. I'm going to get to this last short article where it talks about Israel has killed 37 mothers a day. Yes, it's a very short article I'm going to bring up in just a second. But let me read these super chats here. This one says, under Biden, random people claiming to be FBI are coming to people's houses to ask about their pro-Palestinian posts on Facebook and mainstream media, but Trump. Yes, ARJ 1997. I've seen this, and my wife, I think, pointed out this thing to me, what you're talking about. And I think maybe Nick or somebody retweeted that. But yes, that is actually happening. And this is Nika Seneca, maybe that's how you say it. New member, welcome to the RBN YouTube family. Meanwhile, they're trying to take down TikTok, and it's Seneca. Also with a super chat, brand new member and a super chat. Thank you for the support, ARJ 1997. Again, Donald Trump, ultimate boogeyman for the Democrats, and that is very true. And this one here, another one from ARJ 1997. The duopoly will use every trick in their bag to ignore and downplay the protests to protect the settler colonial project they've all fostered for the past 75 years with the help of corporate mainstream media. Banger after banger super chats from ARJ today. Thank you for that. And I think this is the last one. No, that was the last one. This is the last one on the screen. So now, because I read the other 5 earlier, So let's briefly, before we go out of here, let me make sure I covered everything. We got an anniversary show on Monday. Polling I covered. The Fundraiser genocide, anti-Semitic university was with our guests. So yeah, final one here with this article here. And let's bring it up. Let's bring up the right banner for the editor here. Oh, it's already up. My bad, everybody. It's already up. Israel has killed 37 mothers every day since October 7th. And that's what the gist of this article is about. March 8th is the date 2024. Complicit in genocide where Israel gets its weapons from. And we're not going to read the whole article. I read it myself and I took out the parts that I want to read for the segment. And here we are. This first part is what I wrote. And then the rest of it is the article. So this is what I wrote. 37 mothers killed each day. Now the rest of this is from the article. Over 9,000 Palestinian women. One second, make sure my sound is good. Yeah. Over 9,000 Palestinian women have been killed since the start of the Israeli war on the Gaza Strip. Mothers have been the largest share of Israeli killings. Mothers, not Hamas, mothers. Share of Israeli killings at an average of 37 mothers per day since October 7th. The numbers above from the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza and the Red Crescent Society, respectively, only convey part of the suffering experienced by the 2.3 million Palestinians in the Strip. There is not a single section in Palestinian society that has not paid a heavy price for the war, although women and children are the ones who have suffered most, constituting over 70% of all victims of the ongoing Israeli genocide. Let's pause here. So when people say, how can you say, I think Jake Tapper was the last person I can envision saying this to AOC. It was the AOC interview. So genocide is a distinct definition, meaning there is an intent. He kept emphasizing intent. You're saying it's an intent? The threshold that the empire, U.S. empire, and Western chauvinist countries have set up, the threshold to clear intent is that you have to admit intent. The person killing people have to admit it is the threshold, not by evidence, meaning you intend to kill 1,000 people if only one out of the 1,000 was Hamas. Your intent is to kill them if you bomb, knowing there was 1,000 people in there with the one Hamas. Your intent is to kill them by your results. That's what we should be looking at. So if 70% of the killings are women and children, the intent isn't proven by the results, by it being 70% women and children. True, these women and their children are killed at the hands of Israeli soldiers, but they are murdered with U.S. Western supplied weapons. And again, I said it was a short article, but 37 mothers every day. This is the largest demographic that is murdered in this occupation that is being done by U.S. supplied weapons. And then Obama wants you to say, you need to also listen. Then they want you to believe they want a ceasefire with that fake resolution. Just think of all of the attempts that have failed, that have fizzled away. They don't talk about like that fake resolution that they tried to pass. The attempts to fool people because they know they're not going to change policy because this is not a democracy is eye-opening to a lot of people. At least I hope it's eye-opening to a lot of people. All right, I think we have come to an end of our very long stream. We have 224 people on Rumble watching. What's up, Rumble? Shout out to all of you. 224 of you, and we only got 58 likes over here. What's up with that? So let's get 58 likes. We got 2 thumbs down. I guess the imperialists don't like us talking about the imperialist core. So 225 people on Rumble watching. And then on all together everywhere else, we have 1,700 people. So all together, we have 1,900 people plus watching from all of our platforms. So 1,900 people, wherever you're watching, hit the like button, check the thumbs up, whatever it is on your platform, from Twitch to Twitter to X to Facebook to YouTube. Hit that like button to Rumble. Hit that like button wherever you're watching. We are growing, people, and we're only growing because you're helping us by supporting us. If you want to support us through Patreon or our editor, just make sure you join us as become a Patreon member. $36 a year, $3 a month is the lowest plan you can get. But we pay an equal share to our editor out of the funds we get from Patreon. This is some of the work she does, like this graphic right here. She does this graphic. She did this graphic of Nick and CJ. This graphic she did. Our editor, Aaron. So if you want to contribute to make sure we're able to give her just due, become a Patreon member. Also, if you haven't been to our website to check out our merchandise store, you are missing out. I can go there now to our website. Here's our website here. Check it out. On the right side, you got links to most of our social media. I'm not going to say all because it doesn't allow you to, it only allows you to do 4. So there is a couple of social media that's missing here. But that's our website. You got chapters you can go to. If you click on chapters, you see what we want to accomplish at our chapters, and then keep scrolling, you see the different chapter locations. Currently, Long Beach is kind of on pause because I'm living somewhere. I had the temporarily housing issue, and I think where I'm moving to is going to be switched from Long Beach, so it's going to be switched to a different city. I'll be moving quite far away quite soon. And then if you click RBN merch, it'll take you to our merchandise store where you can check out our NATO mug. You can check out our logo mug. You can check out our hoodies. You can check out many things and support us this way. So you can support us by becoming Patreon members, or you can support us by checking out our merchandise. And here goes some mugs, for example. Where is it? Oh, sorry. I didn't scroll all the way down. It's still opening. So we have our signature mug there. And then we have our unserious mug. That has been selling lately. The unserious mug has been selling. Then we got the Abolish Police mug. So here goes some of our merchandise you can get on our merch store. You got to go to our website to get this information. And let me get our merchandise. Here's our merchandise banner right there. You can check out. And then we have gift cards, of course. And then there's our abolish mug. There's another mug here. Here's our vote blue, no matter who is for morons mug. There's our all cops are bad mug. And then we have the lesser of two evil mug. We have the post-duopoly voter mug, meaning you're a third party or independent voter mug. We have Democrats and Republicans can kiss my ass mug. You can get all those same graphics on that you can get on mugs, that you can get it on a tote bag. Here's our NATO is a terrorist organization mug. And then our class warfare is needed mug. You can get the same graphics on a tote bag and on a tire. So let's say you wanted, and the reason I always use this hoodie, because the hoodie shows the different colors. And so let's say you like this hoodie here of our regular logo or our signature logo. You can get it in green. You can get it in red. You can get it in black. So check out our website. There's a lot of good things you can get there. Hit that like button on your way out. On YouTube, the goal is 800 likes. On Facebook, I don't think we really have a goal. On Twitter, through Nick's, if you're watching our feed through Nick's feed, 1,000 likes we should have, is 1,000 of you watching. If you're watching through the main account, 400 of you are watching, so we should have 400 likes there. So everybody hit that like button. Thank you for watching. It's time to go. I have really did too much today. I am dead tired now, so let me see if I can leave you with something good, though. I'm going to go through my Twitter feed to make sure nothing is, no breaking stories, right? Is there any breaking stories that I'm missing I wasn't able to report on because I've been live for like 3.5 hours? Here's Nick with something here. No decision on fate of U.S. forces present in Niger. So they've been told to leave, and are they going to leave, though, is the point. Here's a free Palestine protest there from JB. A savvy tweet. Philippines president has caught Zelensky syndrome. So it doesn't look like anything majorly breaking. There's protests, just our normal sort of hectic world. Is there anything I can report on? No. All right. So there isn't anything to report on. Is this Afeni talking? So let's play this Afeni. Afeni, who is a former member of RBN. A lot of people don't know that, but Afeni used to be a member of RBN. Here is Afeni at a rally. I'll leave you with this video. Thank you for watching.
We all know that the IOF is committing unspeakable atrocities in Gaza. We also know that the Israeli occupation forces cross-trains with American police. There are 69 cop cities being built across the country right now. People talk about how America is becoming a police state. America is a police state. And we know for a fact that that $90 million facility that they're trying to build in Atlanta will be designated as a training ground for the Israeli occupation forces. Say Cop City will never be built. Cop City will never be built. We all know that the IOF is committing